We are here tonight for a regularly scheduled meeting of the Jenks City Council. Today is Tuesday, April 5th of 2022. The time is 6 p.m. My name is Corey Box. I will be your chair for this evening. Mr. Macy, can you please call us to order?
Caitlin?
Here.
Isabel? Here. Murray? Here. OJ?
Here.
Klein? Present. Short? Here. Mayor Box.
Yes, let the record reflect that we have a full house. And for tonight's invocation, we'd like to welcome the fresh-faced Pastor Lucas. How are you, sir? Caught me off guard when I saw you today.
Yes,
Please join us in prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today, Father, for this day that you have made. And Father, we will rejoice and be glad in it. Father, I pray that you would direct our steps, Father, that you would guide our minds, Father, that you would direct us, Father, into the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Father, would you be with this meeting this evening? Father, we thank you for the great city of Jenks, and Father, all the plans that you have for it. It's in your name we do pray. Amen.
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 Here with me. We got a little something for you, my friend. For those of you who don't know Pastor Lucas, this is the last time he's going to give us an invocation. He's leaving the city of Jenks and he's moving on for his own ministry. God's called him. I wish God would call everybody to Florida on the beach, but I'm not sure how that worked out. I think you must pray harder than the rest of us. But you have been a great, good and faithful servant. And every time we need you, you're here. You've been a friend, a mentor. You're a pastor to this gentleman here. The three of us on the city council, we go to First Baptist Jenks, but we're all pretty familiar with what you do. And we can't thank you enough. You've been such a blessing. We wanted to take a moment to give this to you and recognize you. And if it's okay, we'd like to turn the tables and say a prayer for you. Yes, sir. So let's get a picture with you first, my friend. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this young man. We appreciate everything he's done for our city. He's been such a blessing to this city council, to the people in our community, for all the good works that he's done. And we pray for his protection and that you just bless his ministry wherever he goes, that, Lord, you would just help him to be a great fisher of men. We pray for traveling mercies for him as he and his family hit the road. We just pray that your angels would be around and protect him. Lord, no matter what he does in his career as in ministry, we just pray that everything would bring great glory and honor to your name. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yes, come for next week. Okay, at this point, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got a couple of sharp-dressed men in the audience, and I'd like to ask if there's an Eagle Scout in the room, other than this one right here, if you'd like to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, it would be our honor. Gentlemen. And whichever of you is the oldest, if you would please, sir, take the lead and lead us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it. Or the tallest. That's you, my friend.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you're an Eagle Scout, if you'd like, please stay up here and have a seat. All right, just actually stand with us for a moment. We're like to make a presentation for you. And what we have for you is a proclamation, and we'll go ahead and read it. And if we'd like to get our Eagle Scouts to share a little bit of your story, maybe talk about your Eagle Scout project. So if you would, bear with me one moment. Let me read this, and then we'll open the floor to you guys. Okay, City of Jenks of Oklahoma. Proclamation for Eagle Scouts. Whereas the Boy Scouts of America provides the nation's foremost youth program of character development and help young people be prepared for life. It is comprised of approximately 2.2 million men and women between the ages of 5 and 21, and approximately 800,000 volunteers in local council. Since its inception in 1910, more than 130 million young men and women have participated in the Boy Scouts of America's youth program. And the Boy Scouts of America highest rank is Eagle, and it takes years of dedication and commitment to achieve. And Eagle Scouts act as leaders and role models in the community. And whereas the Eagle Scout Award is a distinction that will follow one throughout life, it will be a beacon to others of the leadership, quality, and commitment this young individual has shown. And Scouts Luke Casperson, Joseph Downs, Carson McKinney, and Matthew Soul from Boy Scout Troop 185 right here in Jenks have obtained this highest honor of the Eagle rank. Now, therefore, I, Corey Box, Mayor of the City of Jenks, do hereby proclaim April 6th of 2022 in the City of Jenks as Troop 185 Eagle Scout Day. It's your day, gentlemen, tomorrow. Thank you. So it wouldn't be right not to put you on the spot. We're going to have each of you come up, just tell us how long you've been in Scouts, a little bit about your Scout, your Eagle project, and then we'll have a slightly older Eagle Scout and I will come up and we'll grab a picture with you and give you a proclamation. How's that sound? You, Sue. Thank you, sir. You first.
I've been in scouting since Cub Scouts, since the very beginning. And I have been in this Boy Scout troop for I think over, I don't remember exactly, I'm sure it's been almost over 10 years. And about my project that I did, for those who are probably aware of this place called Flycatcher Trail near the high school, many Eagle projects have been done there. I myself have done mine, and it was in construction and installation of 2 new picnic tables. And the idea behind this was, since this place was near the high school, it was used by the high school itself and the Freshman Academy. And since there are some classes that go out there to Flycatcher Trail for some of their classes, they needed rooms or places to sit since there weren't enough for the class size. So we provided them enough sitting space for them as well, and also visitors to the trail itself.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I hear you just graduated. Is that correct?
Yes.
What are you going to do? What are your plans, if you don't mind sharing?
Currently, I'm going to community college, Tulsa Community College, and well, my plans have been fluctuating as time has gone on, since doing things actually in person has made me realize that some things that I thought I wanted to do may not have been the thing that was right for me.
Mm-hmm.
But as for now, I've been thinking about looking into tech since, well, I don't know if I should explain it here.
Are you the one that self-admittedly at your Eagle Scout ceremony suggested that you may have waited to the very last second to, was that you?
Yes, I am, like many, a victim of procrastination.
Like all of us. Yeah.
And I don't want to put some light shine on worldly trouble, but if it weren't for a certain pandemic, then I wouldn't have gotten the extra time I needed to make up for it.
Understood.
But I want to take this heated word of advice. Don't be like me and procrastinate. And don't expect
a world-changing event to give you extra time to make up for it.
Well, I appreciate those sage words of wisdom, but I will say this. Like you, do you know what percentage of scouts actually make the Eagle Scout rank?
Not very many.
I'm pretty sure it's somewhere just under 4. So I think we all could benefit from it being a little more like you. Every one of us has had some success, but I'm pretty sure we all waited for the last minute too. Congratulations, you're an adult. All right, who's next? How about you, Luke? I'm sorry, I didn't know who was in order. How you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
Good. Give us your 411 and tell us about your project and what your plans are.
All right. Hi, my name is Luke Casperson. I've, like Joey, been in scouting since Cub Scouts, and I joined Troop 185 when I was about 12 years old, so this would make it 6-ish years now. My Eagle Scout project was relocating the bushes and plants that were planted in Christ the Redeemer Lutheran Church's gardens to a different location since that area was going under construction. On top of that, I also provide for them 2 sturdy but portable benches for their common use.
Excellent. Are you graduating high school or no?
I'm still in high school.
You're still in high school. Okay. So what's left for you? You're an Eagle Scout now. What do you do now?
Well, hopefully graduate.
No, I know. What do you do in Scouts? There's nowhere to go, right? So how do you stay affiliated?
Well, once you reach a certain point, and it's kind of ingrained in the ranks in Boy Scouts, but after a certain point, you just become like a mentor towards the younger Scouts and help them figure out their way in life and hopefully get to their Eagle Scouts.
Very well. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you. Carson. Come on, Carson. How are you, sir? Thanks for being here.
So, hello, my name is Carson McKinney. I've been in Scouts since 1st grade, like both Luke and Joey. I joined Scouts when I was 10, I think. I've been in it for about 5 years. For my Eagle project, I made these interactive cards that pre-Kers could play with inside for their recess, because at Jenks West Elementary, Building B, they did not have very many things to do inside, and from what I've heard from the teachers so far, they like it. The kids are more distracted. They play well with them. It makes their life easier, not as stressful.
Has anyone ever made one of those before?
Not that I know of.
You ever heard of a show called The Shark Tank?
Yeah.
Could be your Shark Tank moment. You're so proud. Great. And you don't look like you're graduating anytime soon, right? Okay. Thank you for your service. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Guessing you're Matthew.
Kinda.
It's not possible, Matthew.
I am Matthew's younger brother. I'm filling in from he got off work at 6 o'clock. So he's on his way here as fast as he can.
Well,
I can explain.
Dad, you're living up to the motto of always be prepared. You didn't know you were going to face the dawn. Tell us about your brother.
So he's been in Scouts since kindergarten all the way through. He joined 185 back when he was 12. And his Eagle project, he made a garden at Darnaville Elementary for Union. It has like 3 or 4 pretty big raised garden beds where the elementary kids could go and have a little club to plant some stuff and rock plants. And he also got a fence around it with built-in gravel and got a shed, so it's pretty nice.
Cool.
Looking at it. But
You want to keep talking a little bit longer? We can hope your brother makes it. Are you? So where are you in the world of scouting? Are you? Is this part of your plan? Are you to be an Eagle Scout?
yes, I'm planning to be Eagle Scout. I am first class. I've been a Scout for 3 years, 2 years actually. So I'm halfway there, and just after this, it's just more leadership than it is Scout skills.
Yeah. Well, the leadership lessons never end. I think we can all attest to that. So, we can't tap dance much longer, but we'll go ahead and I got to tell you, you look a lot like your brother. I saw you at the ceremony, and I wouldn't have known that you weren't him. So I told you, I think you can substitute in for him in a picture. We'll get going. So at this point, I'm going to have my Eagle Scout, Mr. Murray. We're going to come forward. We're going to hand you guys this. If any of your parents or scout leaders want a picture, please make your way in front. We'll try to squeeze you in. Or, yeah.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, point of order, I earned Eagle Scout and went on for 2 palms, so there is more to do after you get Eagle Scout. And so the first Boy Scout troop in America was in February of 1910 back east, but there was actually a troop formed in in Pahuska, Oklahoma in May of 1909. My grandfather was one of those, but he and another young man didn't have the money for a uniform, so their name wasn't included on the roster. But great.
And how do you want to do, whatever kind of picture you want? Why don't you get all you guys up here? Yeah.
Let's just do.
I know. I don't know what the hell. I don't know it either.
But the parents, each mom.
And no more cooking in the Scout building.
And Girl Scouts is a lot more strenuous than Eagle Scouts.
Thank you, Eagle Scouts. How many Scouts are still here and need to be here all night to earn a merit badge? Oh, you picked a great night. Good night. Good job. All right. Go ahead for Pledge Allegiance. All right. Your proclamation. Yeah, real quick. Today's April. It's election season. Congratulations, Councilor Murray, 5 years on the council. Councilors Lynn, Isabel, and O'Shea, been here 3 years, and I got my 2 gentlemen on congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. Appreciate your service.
Yourself, Mayor, 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. Long time. All right, citizens' comments. At this particular point in our meeting, you are welcome to come forward. You can speak on anything, any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. And we will limit you to 3 minutes if you can make that work with us. So at this point, we will open the floor. If you are here and would like to address the council on any topic other than what's on our agenda, please come forward. Okay.
Is there a section for audited items?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have no citizens' comments. Thank you very much. We'll get underway with our official business, which is item number 1, consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for approval of tonight's consent agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion?
No, Mayor, I would like to pull item E.
Very well. We have a request from Councilor Lynn to pull item E. Can we get a second on her motion?
Second.
All right. You can vote to remove item E from the consent agenda, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes. Let's go ahead and approve item number 1, the consent agenda as it is without item E, please. Roll call.
Motion to approve exempt item E.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second. Let's vote, please.
Kaylin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Bond?
Yes. Item 2, let's discuss letter E. Counselor Lynn.
Yes, it's very simple. I did not see whenever I went through the contract or the list of parks and things that were going to be mowed and maintained by the contract. I did not see Lions Park on it. And
Good evening, Mr. Carr.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Elsewhere, I know it's on there someplace, but I forgot to bring the paperwork. I had it in my hand. I must have left it someplace. On the ground. Anybody have a copy of this? There's a lot of projects on here, so.
yeah, I lined it to make sure
Counselor,
I
it's,
found folks where.
I believe it's item number 56, Lions Club Park and Alley.
Yes, it is.
And
So that's on page, it's on page 58 and
I figured I missed it.
it's number 56.
Thank you.
Is that the pickleball court?
Yes,
Okay, very well.
We did include all the parts. I just didn't know exactly where it was on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any other questions or comments, Counselor Lynn?
Yeah, that's all. I do, real quick, are we gonna continue to spray with the sanders? You know, we
Yes.
make such headway on it. Thank you.
Very well, Counselor Lynn, would you like to make a motion to approve E?
I motion to approve item E.
Second.
We have a proper motion second for item E. Number 1, let's vote, please.
Kaylin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Bond?
Yes. Item 3, Resolution 761, requesting the Indian Nations Council of Governments to
Yes.
program Tulsa Urbanized Area Surface Transportation Funds for consideration of funding in federal fiscal year 2024 for construction of the 96th Street Bridge Preventative Maintenance Project. We're on page 140 in your packet. If you'd like to follow along, Mr. Cloyd. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff. I'd like to present both items 3 and 4. Once they're very similar, but they're just two different projects. These are related to a new round of federal funding under the Surface Transportation Program, which is open for applications by NCOG for the period of fiscal year 2024. Federal funding for these projects can be a maximum up to $3 million per project, and a minimum of 20% of the total project has to be provided by a local match. Applications were submitted to NCOG on March 11th of this year, and supporting resolutions are due by August 20th of this year. The two projects I'd like to talk about now are the two different resolutions. Resolution 761, which is item 3, is related to the 96th Street Bridge Preventative Maintenance. And then I'll go through and explain briefly Resolution 762, which is related to the 121st Street Trail. So the 96th Street Bridge Preventative Maintenance Project, this is related to an inspection that was done by Garber Engineers in September of last year. During the inspection, they discovered that there was some concrete fall on some of the bearing surfaces, on some of the bottom flanges, on some beams, as well as all of the deck joints on the bridge itself needed to be resealed. So this project is doing these repairs on that bridge. They're very minor repairs, they're not critical, but it's something we need to get done so that it's not a bigger problem later. The second project is the 121st Street Trail Project, This is a trail that we've actually put forth before for federal funding. So we didn't get approved before, we're doing it again. Hopefully we'll get it this time. This is a trail that will be on the north side of 121st Street between Elm and Elwood. This trail would basically provide a connection from the South Elm Trail, which is not built yet, but will be when we widen Elm Street, and then other subdivision trail components of Elwood Avenue on the other side of this roadway section. So those are the two projects that we're putting forward. I want to explain a little bit more about this request. No funds are requested to be appropriated at this time, since this is a project that still needs to be approved through the INCOG selection process. When it's determined that this project is awarded for funding by ODOT, the project budget and funding source will be developed for acceptance by council at that time. So tonight, what I'm asking for is basically a requirement of the application is to attach the STP project resolution adopted by the governing body at a public meeting. So INCOG basically wants to see that the governing body of the city approves these projects, and that's kind of what the resolution is serving as a means to show that approval. So staff requests approval of both resolutions for these two project funding applications. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Cloyd. Any questions from the council? Any questions on item 3? Very well. If we'd like, we can entertain a motion to approve item number 3, resolution 761.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 761, item 3.
Second?
We have a proper motion and a second for item 3. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein? Yes. Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, sir. Item 4, resolution 762, requesting the Indian Nations Council of Governments to program Tulsa Urbanized Area Surface Transportation Funds for consideration of funding in federal fiscal year 2024 for construction of the 121st Street Trail from Elm Street to Elwood Avenue. Is there a motion to approve item 4?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second for item 4. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes. Item 5, funding agreement for traffic technology improvements with the Indian Nations Council of Governments, and authorize the mayor to execute the document. The total cost of the project has been estimated to be $676,500. Federal funding approved in an amount of $495,000, which is 74% of the total. And the city will contribute $181,500, or 26% of the total. The funding for this project will be provided in the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Mr. Cloyd, we are on page 176.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors and staff, in November of last year, the City Council approved Resolution 749. This was the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, or CMAQ, program application for improvements to the traffic signal.
It'll be only a matter of time before we see 100 pieces of paper.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thought your motion or your hand gesture.
I
was what I'm saying. Where was I? Yes, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, or CMAQ, improvements. This program application was for improvements to the traffic signal infrastructure. This resolution accompanied an application to INCOG for federal funding under this program to upgrade the traffic signal technology for 10 of the city's 14 signalized intersections. There was a reminder within the memo about what the technology upgrades were. I don't want to go into that at this time. But in December of 2021, the INCOG board approved Jenks' traffic signal improvement project for funding under this program. The mayor already kind of described, I won't go through the total part, what it costs. The total cost is estimated to be $676,500. The mayor already mentioned in the description of this item what the breakdown between the city and the federal would be. As a reminder, this project will be funded under the 22-23 budget. So staff requests approval of the funding agreement for traffic technology improvements with INCOG and authorize the mayor to execute the document. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Cloyd. Any questions from council on my right? Councilor Lynn.
Don't tell me I missed it. Well, it said that you're gonna upgrade 10
Yes.
intersections. Can you, off the top of your head, tell me which 10?
No, not, I can tell you the ones that aren't, that are in the other 10. So, first of all, the 101st and Elm intersection is already underway. We're waiting for that equipment to come in. So that's one of the 4 remaining. The other 2 remaining are on the Elm Street project, when we do the widening of Elm Street, so 111th and 121st. And then I believe the last one is not signalized right now, but we'll fund that one with budgetary funds at a later time, and I forget which one the last one is. Hopefully that answers your question. Otherwise, I can send you an email with the ones that are covered under this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. And any other questions from the council for Mr. Cloyd regarding item number 5? It appears not. Very well. If there's no more further discussion, we can entertain a motion to approve item 5.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second for item 5. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Mayor Mons?
Yes. Item 6 is ordinance number 1579, which is the adoption of the 2018 ICC International Construction Codes. Mr. Rush, we are on page 182. Good evening.
Good evening.
And, yeah. How are you?
Good, Mayor, Council, staff, thank you for having me. Brought one little show and tell. These are the code books under discussion for adoption, so I just thought I would bring those up here in case you wanted to see them. So this ordinance is to amend Chapter 4 of the Jenks City Code and replace the 2015 editions of our existing construction codes with the 2018 editions of those same codes. The state of Oklahoma has already done this. They have adopted and amended these codes to be the minimum statewide standard for the state of Oklahoma. So this ordinance would bring us in compliance with those state requirements. In addition, this ordinance also amends and modifies our current code to align it with state requirements and procedures, remove outdated references, and consolidate some duplicated text. It's been a long time since we did have one of these adoptions. Pretty cut and dry. Any questions?
Any questions from the council for Mr. Rush? We haven't done this in the last 5 years. We don't have an option.
Correct,
We
yeah,
can't-
so.
This is standard practice.
The standard practice, so in 2009, the state of Oklahoma instituted a building code commission, the Oklahoma Uniform Building Code Commission, that set out to adopt a set of standards that would be a statewide minimum. So in doing that, any city that's not a charter city is required to adopt those standards as the absolute minimum standards. So we have an option to increase to do a higher standard than these codes, but not less than. And at the time, I'm only recommending we adopt as amended, adopted by the state of Oklahoma. I feel it's a sufficient construction code without any extra regulations at this point.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rush. Any last questions for Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Mr. Councilor Murray?
Mr. Rush, how many codes were changed? No. In 2018 is the most recent that the state has done on that?
That the state has done, yes. And so this is what we would typically think of as the commercial codes. So it's the, as stated in the ordinance, it's the International Building Code, Fire Code, Plumbing Code, Mechanical Code, Existing Building Code, Fuel Gas Code. It does not include the International Residential Code. So the residential code that governs 1 and 2 family homes and townhouses, that is still at the 2015 version at the state. So they are currently discussing that and discussing amendments. So I expect that to happen within the next year or two, that we'll be adopting that. But yeah, this is the current set. The state typically lags behind about 3 years to have time to review. So while there have been 2021 codes published, they have not reviewed or adopted those yet.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Councilor Lynn?
Are these gonna be online?
There are copies online, yes. So the International Code Council actually now has available all their codes online. You can see the most recent version. And then additionally on our website, we published a link to the Oklahoma Uniform Building Code amendments, because if you only look at this book, you won't get the full picture, because of course the state went and adopted for this IBC here Here are the amendments. It's about 50 pages that they have changed or modified, so you need both of those things in order to make sense of the code. And all that is available to the public.
Thank you, Councilor Lamb. If there's no more questions on item 6, we can entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second on item 6, ordinance number 1579. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein? Yes. Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 7 is the emergency clause for ordinance number 1579.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second for item 7. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein? Yes. Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item number 8, ordinance number 1580, adopting the 2018 International Fire Code. Mr. Rush, anything you need to add?
Yeah, so this is pretty much the same thing, and the fire code was one of the codes that we just adopted for chapter 4. We have it in 2 different sections of city code because one is kind of my chapter with protective inspections, chapter 4, and then chapter 8 is for the fire department. So this is just recognizing that this is the construction code for both departments. And in addition, the fire department chapter 8 will also be adopting the 2021 version of the life safety code, the NEC. So that's just it's kind of a common sense code that regulates general life safety in buildings, so making sure that they have fire extinguishers and things like that. We have an existing version of that as well. This is just updating to the new version.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Any questions from the council for Mr. Rush? Councilor OJ? Oh, saw your light.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Very well, we can entertain a motion to approve item 8, ordinance number 1580.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second for item 8. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Caitlin? Or I'm sorry, Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 9 is the emergency clause for ordinance number 1580.
Motion approved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and a second for item 9. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, thank you. Item 10 is discussion about the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO, and proposed rezonings of the downtown core and riverfront tourist commercial districts. We are on page 189 in your packets. I want to take a moment that most of you are probably here for item 10, so I wanted to say a couple quick things for some general guidelines for tonight. We're going to ask that speakers, we're going to go ahead and limit your time. We're going to give you beyond the normal 3 minutes. We're going to go ahead and extend it to 5. We understand that communication has always been a struggle between cities and residents, so we feel like we certainly owe to you to give you guys a full 5 minutes tonight. We ask that you address the council as a whole. We are one entity, so we cannot, please don't address us as individuals. We already talked about your 5 minutes. We would ask that you keep the discussion based on the matter at hand, which in this case is item number 10. And I think it goes without saying that we're going to ask that you and us, we will be respectful of everyone's time. We will be respectful of everyone that we speak to tonight. And also for the council, if you guys do want to speak tonight, you need to please seek recognition. And to do that, simply turn on your mic. If your mic is not on, I will assume you do not wish to speak. That being said, so let's talk a little bit about a phone call I had, I don't know, a month ago, and I'll keep this brief. I want to address that phone call, and I want to say this. It was only a week or so ago that I got a chance to listen to the entire phone call, and my wife was there with me. And other than maybe some of the phone calls I made to her when we were dating, it was probably the most regrettable phone call of my professional life. So I would say that it was not a true reflection of me as a professional. There were a lot of words used that were inappropriate, in my opinion, and it was a really bad day for me. It was a bad day at work. So I would say that that is my responsibility. My wife told me not to take that call. I wasn't in physical condition to take that call, but I did it anyway. And I would like to address one particular word that I think may have been offensive to some, and that was the word shacks. I can tell you guys that it's pretty easy to take things out of context, but if anybody would have asked me why that word was spoken, 2 days prior, I had a very lengthy conversation with a Jenks business owner who does not own the properties that she runs her business on. And she was telling me about an issue that she had with a storage shed that was in the back of her property. Now, I grew up using the word shed, and in the course of that conversation, we had a couple laughs, and she called it a storage shack. And I asked her what she meant by that, and she basically described the building that was in the back of the property. We had a good laugh about it. She called it a shack, I called it a shed. I had expressed some frustration with her because she wanted to tear the building down, and I agreed that I would love to help her do that. I think I even found volunteers to do it at no cost. And through a friend of mine, we were going to haul off the trash and do it at no cost to the business owner. Unfortunately, the landlord did not agree, and the storage shed or storage shack is still sitting on the property. So I think we all know things can be taken out of context, but for any of those who were offended, who think I was referring to a home or your home, then I will go ahead and offer you an apology. So that being said, item 10, right? Okay. We're going to go ahead and we have a couple presentations for you before we open the floor to guest speakers' comments, and I think Mr. Shroud is going to lead us off.
Yeah, Mayor and all members of council, I'll open this up with just kind of an overview of how we got to where we are today. Tonight is really a 3-year culmination of work on city staff, council, and the citizens' part. In 2019, we sat around and said, we live in a great community. We've been the fastest growing community in the state of Oklahoma for the last 20 years. About half of our residents have bachelor's degrees. We have high median income. We have low crime. But, what do we want to be in 20 years? And, we wanted to gather feedback from the citizens, from stakeholders, from businesses to try to understand what does everyone in this community like right now, and what do they wish that we had that we don't have. And so to engage in that process, which really is in a way, strategic plan that's community-wide, we decided to overhaul our comprehensive plan and our zoning codes. And in May of 2019, we engaged with Halcyon Levine to begin that process. And I guess a week after we engaged with them, they were already having meetings with stakeholders. And if I could just briefly go through some of the meetings that they held for the comprehensive plan, their agreement was approved on May 6, 2019. They held a business workshop on May 15th, 2019. The goal is to ensure a business-friendly community. Then in June of 2019, they held roundtable discussions with department heads, city council members, planning commission members, and the Citizen Advisory Committee. And then on August 1st, we had a pretty large community-wide workshop at the aquarium that we kind of called an issues identification. And so Halcyon Levine facilitated that meeting and basically went through and said, let's write down all the different things that you love about this community right now, and then let's try to identify things that we can improve on. Basically anything, whether it's shopping destinations, crime, traffic, street repair, infrastructure, whatever it may be, basically anything under the sun. And let's kind of narrow it down and see what are the major issues affecting the community. After that, there was a focus group with the senior citizens. That was in August. The Citizen Advisory Committee continued to meet. We had student and youth sub-area visioning workshop in December of 19. There was another public meeting at Spain Ranch in December of 2019 where we basically kind of refined the information that was collected in August of 2019 and kind of went through and did exercises that was a little bit more specific to the community in specific areas. Then in the Citizens Advisory Committee continued to meet until basically the comprehensive plan had a special hearing at the Planning Commission in August of 2020, and then a City Council adopted the comprehensive plan in September of 2020. And so the comprehensive plan basically is a map of the entire city with different uses and future uses. And, so it doesn't necessarily reflect what is on the ground right now, but based on all citizen feedback, what the citizens hope the community develops. And mainly we're talking about vacant land or land that could be redeveloped, and that's mainly in the downtown area. So with that, House C. Levine then moved forward on updating the zoning code based on all the input from the comp plan. And there were numerous open houses related to the final version or the draft version of that in December of 2021. And then when we received feedback from some of the public that perhaps they didn't know about those meetings in December, we decided to have an additional 2 meetings in February, trying to get the word out to anyone who may have missed that. And we also had individual meetings with citizens to try to gather feedback. And so basically from all of that feedback on the zoning code or the UDO, we've made, I would say, pretty significant amendments or edits to the draft version based on the feedback that we received. And I'd say that largely the feedback that we received was related to the downtown area. And if I could just kind of touch on why the downtown is important. The city council held a strategic planning workshop in August of 2021, and the main themes coming out of that was, everything that we heard from the public during the comprehensive planning process and the UDO process was related to, we have a great community, we've been really blessed with the residential development that we've had, but we just don't have as much commercial development as citizens would like. And so, we focused on essentially 4 main areas of commercial development moving forward for the next 20 years, one of which is the riverfront area near the aquarium, Riverwalk, and then even south of the Turnpike at the proposed Simon Outlet Mall site. Another location was the downtown area and the downtown core. And then 2 other areas were in the Highway 75 corridor, being Main Street and Highway 75 and 121st and Highway 75. And I think that the Highway 75 corridor is a lot different than the Main Street and the riverfront area. What we heard during our comprehensive plan, UDO, and strategic planning workshop with the council was, the downtown is something that really can't be replicated. It's, over 100 years old. It's our historic downtown. We're really lucky to have it. Bixby, Glenpool, Sand Springs all wish they had a downtown like this. And what can we do to potentially improve this area? And then along with the riverfront, we have the aquarium, the Riverwalk, and significant amount of vacant land around the aquarium that could be developed. And the idea is that we want to be a destination for families and people of all ages to come visit and kind of have family fun and be a healthy, inviting, active town that people want to not only live in but also visit. And so you have the downtown and the riverfront area, which we want to be unique. And I think the UDO and the comp planners, pretty clear on that. And then you have the Highway 75 corridor with Main Street and 121st Street that are really ripe for big box development, for general services, for things that are more like Tulsa Hills that could frankly be anywhere. But they serve a purpose in that they serve the citizens' needs that live here for shopping and restaurants and other needs. But so you kind of have this juxtaposition where you have the Highway 75 corridor we want big box, we're trying to get people to shop here, and then you have the riverfront and the downtown area that's really more focused on local restaurants, local shops, art, and things that really make Jenks Jenks. And so that's kind of where what led us to this, and we have more info on some of the meetings that were held, but I just wanted to give some of that background before we get started. And so, I don't know, Jackie, do you have some more info on the timeline and the additional hearings that we held?
Please state your full name and your employer, please.
Jackie also possibly being a consultant that's been working with the city on this project. So the Horizon Jenks project, I want to just give a little bit more background info on the outreach approach that we took for both the comprehensive plan and the UDO. And so we get to the next slide, you see that for the comprehensive plan outreach, we really wanted to engage the community to identify issues, aspirations, opportunities, strengths, weaknesses at the outset of the project. So at the beginning, trying to learn where Jenks is now. Then when we got to the middle part of the process, we wanted to find out where the community wanted to go. What's that future vision for Jenks? And we held a visioning workshop and the sub-area visioning workshops to accomplish that. Then at the end of the process, when we had all of the comprehensive plan draft ready, the playbook for how we get to that vision, we held open houses to further refine all of those recommendations. So throughout the process, we were looking for really high-level input from a broad swath of citizens, residents, business owners, any community stakeholders. And we had quite a few outreach events. Chris, you did a great job of reviewing those, but if you hit the next slide. We had the business workshop, community workshop, several focus groups and key stakeholder interviews, lots of meetings, lots of engagement opportunities throughout the process. So if we just go to the next slide. We also not only had these events, but helped to spread the word about the events and about our online engagement opportunities as well. So the city went to the Jenks Tribune, Channel 8, Facebook, Nextdoor, sent out blasts through utility bills as well as email. So there was lots of ways that the city attempted to communicate with all of the residents, all of the business owners, all of the stakeholders in the community. So that resulted in a plan that's really built on community feedback. We had a tremendous amount of input that we received. About 750 times people participated through the process. That included 300 participants in person and 450 online. So some key themes that came out of the community outreach process: active transportation, people wanted more opportunities to walk and bike. There were several others, but one of the big ones that we heard over and over again was about downtown and Old Town Jenks revitalization, as well as the riverfront, really making that a destination in the community. So those were the foundation of the recommendations within the comprehensive plan, which really then formed the foundation of the regulations that we're proposing that we adopted tonight. So the Unified Development Ordinance is the second part of that project, and we had a very different outreach approach for this project. So for the UDO, we really wanted to utilize the comprehensive plan as a starting off point for any recommendations for revisions to the ordinance. And then we engaged industry experts, so architects, developers, both regional developers, local developers, business owners, local land use attorneys, people who really knew what regulations needed to do, needed to be to further Jenks's goals and vision. We also engaged the wider community to review and refine our regulations once they were drafted. So we had several outreach opportunities for the UDO as well. So at the very beginning of the process, before we got into drafting any of our regulations, we had a preliminary recommendations public meeting. These were done virtually. Unfortunately, a lot of the meetings at the beginning of the process were virtual because of the COVID-19 pandemic really inhibited us from meeting in person. So we had the 2 virtual public meetings for the preliminary recommendations, had 3 virtual meetings with the advisory committee to review and refine the draft content. We had a work session with the Planning Commission to go through the first 5 sections, the real meaty sections of the code, 2 in-person open houses, 2 in-person public hearings with the Planning Commission, 2 in-person Q&A sessions, and then staff held a discussion with the residents of Beaver Street regarding the downtown overlay district. So with that, I think I will turn it over to John to go through a little bit more about the history of zoning and how we got here this evening.
Thank you, Jackie. Good evening, sir. If you can have your first and last name and your employer.
Good to be here. John Housfield, partner and founder of Housfield Levine Associates. So I guess I'm my own employee. What I'm going to provide is, I've been working with Jackie. I worked with Devin and Josh back from the comprehensive plan. Wasn't on the ground, but worked with them every step along the way. Worked with Jackie at every step along the way for the zoning ordinance. I've been doing this for longer than I care to imagine, 25 years plus across the country, working specifically in planning and zoning. And for the past 5 years, Jackie and I have been leading our zoning efforts for the firm across the country. So I just want to unpack a couple of things that came out. I think I would characterize it probably more as just sort of misunderstanding historically from a legal perspective of planning and zoning, where it came from, a city's ability to and authority to zone and for what purposes. And this is largely from participating in the public hearing and in the open house. So first I want to go back to 1922. In 1922, the federal government created the Standard State Zoning Enabling Acts. which gave cities and states the ability to create zones and zone by use, development characteristics, and intensity. And the reason being is because the US and cities are really beginning to intensify with a lot of different types of uses in close proximity. So the idea of a smoke belching factory next to an employee residence where the employees wasn't a very safe or healthy condition for those residents. Right? So the standard zoning enabling legislation from the federal government allowed cities to begin to identify what types of uses they wanted where and to regulate those uses for the general public health, safety, and welfare of the community. So again, to create those situations where on a broad spectrum, you had uses next to each other that should have no business being next to each other. And that's why that was created. Then a couple years later, in 1924, they did the Standard City Planning Enabling Acts, again by the federal government, which allowed cities to begin to do long-range planning for themselves. So they could set out on a longer horizon as opposed to a reactionary, a proactive stance on where they would like to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And so, again, that was in 1924, the Standard State or the Standard City Enabling Acts. That was put to the test in 1926. There was a Supreme Court zoning case called Euclid versus Ambler, where zoning was proactively rezoned by the city, and it changed the use that could go there from residential to something else. From industrial to something else. And there was a lawsuit that said by doing so, that property was diminished in value, and therefore was a taking, and therefore was illegal. Well, it went to the United States Supreme Court, and the proactive rezoning by the municipality was held up as being constitutional. It did not deny the property owner use of their property. It changed the use of their property, but did not deny them use of their property. And the court did not get into the fact about the diminution of value or the decrease in value as justification for why the rezoning could not take place. And what that basically said is you could have a certain zoning, but you weren't guaranteed that zoning in perpetuity for forever. And based on sound planning principles, a city's ability to sort of create its own self-destiny going forward, the ability to plan as established by the Enabling Acts by the federal government, the ability to zone as established by the Standard Zoning Acts by the federal government, the city could begin to shape itself over time. And these two things are really even tied together even further. Zoning is not planning. It's not. And planning is not zoning. It's not. Zoning is a tool to help implement a city's planning objectives. All right? Zoning is one tool. It is a tool. It is not planning, and planning in and of itself is not zoning. And this is echoed even more by Oklahoma Title 11 that talks about cities in the state of Oklahoma's ability to zone. And throughout that piece of legislation, and I won't go through and read it all, but it ties very much so a municipality's ability to zone tied back to the comprehensive plan and the objectives of the comprehensive plan as setting forward a path, a guide, a blueprint for that community through which zoning can be a part of implementing that vision over time. So this has been around for 100 years in the United States. Proactively rezoning property on behalf of a municipality is settled constitutional law. It has been for nearly a century. And in the state of Oklahoma, the nexus between comprehensive planning specifically and zoning is tied very closely, even specifically in the state of Oklahoma, under its own state's Title 11. So there's a long history of planning, a long history of zoning. The law is established, and I know there's been some anecdotal discussion about is this lowering the value of properties? I get to say anything that convinced me of that. I think the property is actually increasing in value based on the zoning that's being proposed on the table. But even if the value of property was the same or did diminish, it still isn't a legal grounds for saying that this is a taking or an illegal action on behalf of the city. So I want to talk a little bit about what a taking is. If through actions of rezoning, you deny a property owner use of their property, that's a taking. You have to compensate for that, okay? That's why you can't come into a private piece of property and say, we're gonna plan you to be a city park, and we're gonna zone you for open space. Well, that person can do nothing with their property, nothing. They have no reasonable use of their property, so you have to pay them for that. That's a taking. You've taken that property essentially from them, so you have to compensate. Takings are also thought of if you think of eminent domain or public good. If a highway goes through an area and the DOT has to start assembling or acquiring properties, they can't just come through and take the property, not compensate the property owner for where the highway right-of-way is going to go through, nor can a property owner dig in their feet and say, for the public good, I'm not gonna let this highway be built, period. If it's going to block a public good, they can go to court. Through that court proceeding, they will define and determine a fair market value. The court determines that. Then the state, or whoever the agency is, the city, whoever it might be, has to pay the property owner for that property, and then the public good goes through. So that's condemnation. To do so without compensation is a taking without just compensation. That's illegal. But what's happening here with regard to rezoning of properties proactively, it's not a taking. We're not denying people use of properties. In some cases, some of those uses are changing a little bit. In some cases, they can increase now and go 2 or 3 stories taller than they would previously, which is an increase in value, not a decrease. So change in uses, change or recalibration of development standards is not a taking under the law, and is consistent with the constitutionality of zoning as established by Euclid v. Angler. So again, that's just a little bit of a background that ties the nexus between planning and zoning implicitly for municipalities and why that was done. It addresses the idea of proactively rezoning property, not at the property owner's request, but at the city's request and proactive nature. And the distinction between a taking versus not a taking with regard to legally rezoning a property. So I just wanted to go through some of that as a foundation, because some of what I heard when I was participating at the open house and the public hearing was some comments that I think probably just didn't understand that foundational that was laid for municipalities to do exactly what Jenks is doing. We worked on this across the country. I worked with municipalities across the country on proactive zoning on a number of different times. Jackie and I did that. It's routine. It is done often. It is not done frivolously or ambiguously. It is done with intention, and that is to dovetail the regulations in the zoning as a tool to implement an already established policy in a comprehensive plan. So that's why it wasn't developed sort of in closed doors, but this extensive public process over 3 years. And so that's sort of where we are now in the foundation for why we are with these recommendations.
Thank you, John. We appreciate that. We could ask you to remain just in case the council has any questions for you. Does anybody on the council on my right seek to be recognized for questions from Mr. Houseal?
Close enough.
Any counselor on my left? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who's next? Mrs. Hilton, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. I am really happy that my documents and book is not near as big as Tanner's documents and books. I'd probably argue that mine's way less restrictive than his, but that's just me. So just to kind of recap where we have been from the planning perspective, this case was heard in December 9th by the Planning Commission 2021, and they unanimously, in a vote of 6-1, because we had one person absent, they unanimously voted to approve the Unified Development Ordinance as presented at that time. Since then, we've made multiple adjustments after public feedback. We've met extensively with individuals, with couples, with business owners. We've met with entire streets of people and had many public hearings. So the Planning Commission did vote to approve it in December, and they felt very comfortable with the direction that it was going, knowing that they had participated in the comprehensive planning portion and had also participated and been part of the UDO portion. The case was heard again March 3rd. There was no action taken. It was on the agenda as other business, and they heard it. We allowed the public to come to speak, to share their comments, their concerns, and no action was taken because it had already been approved. So on page 191 of your packet, it does show the people who spoke. I apologize, I do not have all of their addresses. They didn't put them on the sign-in sheet. let's see. So we have three things before you in the discussion that we're having now, and the public discussion would include the Unified Development Ordinance, the rezoning of the Main Street from the railroad tracks to Fifth Street, and from 8th Street to Aquarium Place. That would be rezoned to downtown core, which was approved by the Planning Commission unanimously, and the rezoning of the Riverfront Tourist Commercial District. And there are multiple parcels in that, and it is edited. So any conversations could include any of those three topics moving forward. And as I understand it, there will be one discussion time. So that's kind of an FYI for myself, for you all, and for the public. So there'll be one discussion on any of those topics, and then there will be 3 separate votes. Lastly, you all got in your packet, or you all were delivered attachment A, which is the Unified Development Ordinance, and I just want to go through it. I'll try to be quick. So I wanted to hit some of the highlights. There were a couple of things that will still have to be edited. So one thing that I want to say up front, Crystal brought it to my attention, and I apologize for this. The zoning map that was presented and uploaded to the website has the overlay outline incorrect. When I met with the residents of Beaver Street, they wholeheartedly asked that we do not continue the overlay district into their residential area, and that also includes Pilgrim's Place. So the overlay the zoning map shows that including Pilgrim's Place. So that would be a correction. It is corrected in the UDO, and it will be corrected on the map. So I apologize for that. Okay, you're looking at your packet. So there's 242 pages, and I'm gonna call out the, I'll say like 6 of 242. So if you're following along, it would be page 6 of 242. One of the conversations that we had was with the downtown core and where you start and stop that. And originally, it was proposed that we would rezone all the parcels from the railroad tracks to 7th Street. That has been amended, and the downtown core rezoning as presented tonight will not include blocks 12 and 13 and blocks 24 and 25 of the original town Jenks plat. So that takes it out of 5th through 7th Street. On page 7 of 242, it talks about the downtown transition overlay district. And if you're looking at 16-23, in the middle, it just basically says the downtown overlay encompasses the downtown transition as established in the Jenks comprehensive plan, with the exception of Pilgrim's Place and Cinco subdivisions. So that's where we based that. On page 9, we made some amendments to the impervious surface coverage. This is just to allow a little more flexibility in the code for residents. If you look on page 18 of 242, we have a passionate urban gardening community, and I love to garden. I am not very good at it. My husband keeps telling me I can't do it anymore because I can't keep the weeds out. And he goes in and mows it all down and makes me cry. But there's nothing regulating urban gardens in our zoning ordinance. There was. It was primarily to protect front yards from having hoop houses, etc. But it's not a problem. We took it out, no big deal. On page 19 of 242 is the multi-tenant shopping center. This was not allowed by right in the beginning in the downtown core or in the RTC. If you look in that chart, a C says there's conditional uses. It means you're approved by right, but there's a couple of boxes that we need to check from a design standard. If you look at page 21 of 242, home-based businesses should say conditional use permit. They often went to the Board of Adjustment as a special exception. But if you're not you're not putting a sign up and you're not causing traffic issues, we felt like, and we go through those conditional uses, we felt like it was fine to go ahead and allow that. On page 23 of 242, talks about the downtown core. So this is another thing that was a huge change from the original UDO as presented to Planning Commission in December. And actually, think I told them in March, I can't remember, my timelines are kind of running together. So we did remove the 2-story requirement. So originally, we said if you own a lot on Main Street, but in that downtown core, and you were to tear your building down, if you built something back, it would require 2 stories. And at that time, and I missed it earlier, but I'll tell you now, at that time, office was not allowed on the ground floor. But it makes sense to allow office. There's a lot of times when an office is a good transition, and sometimes you get some really good tenants in there for a couple of years, and we keep them. So, let's see what else. In the overlay district, we had some examples of what you could build, and the idea was this is north side of Main Street. We've really had a lot of transition. There's a lot of different zonings in there. We have all kinds of uses. So the overlay district was really to establish some flexibility for those property owners so that if they wanted to change things, they could without having a public hearing. But we did say, if you're gonna do that, let's make it look and feel like the rest of the neighborhood. So if you're on a block where there's 4 residential homes that have been converted to offices, then we want your new structure to fit well in that. And then it also gives some examples of if you wanted to do a more traditional storefront. And that would be on page 31 of 242. On page 32 of 242, multifamily would not be allowed above the ground floor. That would be residential only above the ground floor. State statute does require that on multifamily that we do a 1/4 mile radius and 30-day notice. And so these are by specific use permit. So if it said was already, if you had more than 8 units, it was specific use permit, but we corrected that. So if you have less than 8 units, it would also require that. And that meets that. Another thing on page 40, most of the townhomes that have been built in the city of Jenks have some type of carport. Some of them are done very nicely, some of them, they're okay. But originally we said garage only, but we allowed, if they really want a carport for their townhome project, they could come to the planning commission and get approval. Let's see. We talked about downtown shopping districts, multi-tenant shopping. Personal storage facilities, originally, they had a very, there's a new concept, you've probably seen it, especially for climate controlled storage. They look like an office building, and the idea is maybe you go in with an office building at first, but then later you actually want an office building, so the requirements kind of reflected that, but we took that standard out for industrial properties. They would not have to build that, make it look like that. And you keep going forever and ever. RTC, so originally we did not allow drive-throughs in the RTC. They're still not allowed in the downtown. It's a little bit less safe and a little bit more auto-oriented when you have a drive-through because you don't get out. But we do allow them now by right with some conditions in the RTC. So that was a big change from the original policy or code that was submitted. On page 70, temporary use specific standards, and it talks about downtown commons, and it's talking about food trucks. And there will always most likely be a separate policy, which has been established by the council, and that would dictate how the downtown commons is influenced by food trucks. There's some other minor changes on these pages. I'll just ask you now, think of anything else that was a major change that I've left out. There was one more, I just remembered. In Article 9, we had added a little flexibility to our, let me give you a page number, to our notice requirements. And we are a statutory city, and based on legal counsel, that will be amended. I sent it to council, but it didn't make it into the packet. I apologize for that. But the Article 9 on page 192, there's a couple of pages there that talks about notice requirements, and that will be amended to match state statute. So state statute 43104, this will be amended. So basically, there's a 15-day notice rather than a 20. We were adding a little extra time. Doesn't mean we can't send it out earlier, but the written text will match state statute.
As a lesson learned, Mrs. Hilton, I would be in favor, and I've always encouraged the city manager to try to over-communicate. I think as a result of this process, meeting the state's minimum requirements is great, but I think we can strive to do better.
We tried.
I know we did, but just as going forward, whether it's a big thing or little thing, we can do better. Thank you.
On non-conforming uses, this did not change from our original zoning. The biggest thing is that instead of, every time that there was a time limit that said 30 days, we changed it to 90 days, giving the residents more time to come into compliance or get whatever it is they need done. So I think that is it from a zoning perspective, and from the actual changes. There was a couple of things that I think Councilor Murray found a grammatical error, or no, a typo. So there's a couple of little things, but.
Councilor Murray found a typo in a 242-page document.
He did. I'm quite shocked by by the typo. I was like, oh, you're right. That's definitely not correct.
Anything else? I'm going to have you stay, and we can. Do you have any more presentations from staff? That's it. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go ahead and open the floor to the council, and if anyone on council would like to be recognized, Councilor Lynn. Sorry.
Back on page 6, where it says excluding blocks 12, 13, 24, and 25 in original town.
Yes.
Do we have a map? I don't know what blocks.
That's from 5th Street to 7th Street.
That's what.
5th through 7th Street. And yes, there is a map, but I don't know if it's new. I tried to throw as many things into the folder as possible, but I don't know if I got that in there.
Anything else, Councilor Lynn? Thank you. Anyone else? All right, very well. We will go ahead and close the floor to the council. At this point, we will open the floor to our guests. I would ask that everyone who wants to will be able to speak tonight. However, I would like to prioritize that if you are a business owner or a citizen of Jenks who lives in the city, let's start with you first. So let's go ahead and just filter, and we'll start with any business owners in Jenks who would like to speak. And as a reminder, please address the council as a whole. If you have questions, save them to the end. We will dismiss you, and then we can address your questions after you've had a seat. So if any business owners would like to come forward, please do so. And ma'am, if you could please state your full name and address, we would appreciate it.
Karen Anderson, 517 East Comanche Street. And I'm not prepared with 5 minutes or my speech, but I did send an email last night to the council, and I know I can't ask each one of them if they read it. So I would like to read it to them. If that's okay.
Yeah, it's your 5 minutes, ma'am.
Today is the day you all decide on the UDO. I certainly hope you have read the entire thing. I've read it several times and it's still not all that clear. I truly believe there has not been enough studies to fully understand how it will affect our city, drainage, traffic, and crime, along with the property values. Those are my concerns. I was born and raised here, went to school here from 1st grade on, had many family members here back in the day. I spent many years volunteering at the schools. I've always loved being in Jenks until I became involved with this. It's the first time in my life driving down Main Street is very disheartening to me. I, along with many other citizens, feel the city has not been transparent with the affected citizens and landowners in this matter. Please ask yourself, why in the world no one from the affected area did not care during the 3 years of planning. I'll tell you why. Because we had no idea you were changing our property. Most of us are business owners and we're busy. And because we trusted our elected officials to do what is right by the citizens and landowners. My husband has lived many places and traveled everywhere and chose to let me stay in Jenks because of my love for the city and I wanted to raise our son here. I'm just one citizen. There are many more to consider. I hope people think about what makes so many people want to live in Jenks. Of course, the school is their first of their priorities, but there's more. The police, fire, and small town feel is a very important part of these decisions too. We all want what is best for the city. We want the city to grow. That growth comes with time. I can assure you over the years I've lived here, the city has grown. It happens. You don't have to do it in a way that the citizens lose faith in their officials. We as business owners feel unappreciated, and like we are not wanted at this point. Sort of like the city doesn't need us. They have bigger and better things. I will be hosting a 500-person event this weekend in Tulsa. They always welcome my business. I promote young people and families playing games and social interaction, promoting how to have fun without drinking or drugs. Something you may not feel is important, but I do. Because of the closeness involved, I shut my store down for over a year. I'm just getting started back up and have spent 4 months trying to figure out what is happening to our city and trying to decipher the different changes, everything that's happened. Please vote what you honestly feel is best, not just a yes vote because someone told you it would be good. I would like to also state that I have not found, you say that you talked to the stakeholders. I don't know if I can talk to him or not. Am I available? Sorry. John Housel said that you guys involved the stakeholders. I cannot find one stakeholder in my area or from that downtown core over to the river district that knew about it. My husband and I went and passed out flyers to let people know. It's the only reason that people are here. And I would still like to hear of some people that were notified or that were at the meetings. I don't think that it's a bad idea to change our city. I don't think it's a bad idea to change our city, but I think that you really need to consider the business owners in with your plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. I will say, you mentioned transparency and communication. I think, the previous mayor did a very good job of ensuring that we were a more transparent council. We've done nothing to change that. You guys remember when we started that process. Communication, I agree with you. I will say this though, I get to go to meetings every month with this gentleman here, and we know every mayor and city manager in Tulsa County. This is something we all struggle with. I think we're doing it better than most, and I'm not just saying that. I take great pride in this group. The honesty we had the day we took office, nothing's changed. There is no attempt to be less transparent than we were before. I would also say, I believe communication is a two-way responsibility. I made a comment, cities do not have unlimited budgets for communication. I've had a discussion with other city managers and mayors, and they're aware of what we're doing here in Jenks, and I think we're doing quite well. Mistakes are made, sometimes things happen, but it is this council's sincere desire, as we just mentioned, to make sure that we communicate more and more effectively and more often. So I would leave it at that. And I would say,
Mayor, that's why we also had 2 extra meetings. I mean, I think, Karen, we heard you that, that maybe some citizens or residents hadn't heard about it, and we genuinely wanted to hear the input that you had, and that's why we had 2 separate meetings and sought input, and frankly changed quite a bit of the draft UDO based on the comments that we heard. So we really do want the input, and I think we received quite a bit of it.
Yeah, and I would say, to Mr. Schott's point, the city planner did ask me my opinion, should we have more meetings?
Well, I don't give orders to the city planner. Nobody here works for the city council except this gentleman here. I gave her advice, and I would suggest to her that the same thing I would have said to anyone else. If you would feel better at the end of the day when it's all said and done, if you would regret not communicating enough, then you can have as many meetings as you want. And I can understand, and I think we did that. And we did it as a result of your request and anyone else's request. What you guys do is effective up to some point when trust is broken in communication. But what you do is effective, and I think the council and planner did respond accordingly. And I think we did give you plenty of extra time to accommodate those meetings. Compared to our peers in other cities, I think we did a pretty remarkable job. But we will improve, and we understand that we could do better. Any other questions from council?
You want me to go ahead and talk now? I want to. Or you want to wait?
I'm sorry, what?
I think you still on citizens.
Yeah, no, we're still, the floor is closed in council for now. So thank you, Mrs. Anderson. If anyone else would like to approach, business owner, homeowner. Good evening, sir. You can please state your name and address.
Tom Anderson, her husband, and live at the same address. After hearing all this stuff, I'm glad I didn't prepare a speech because I would be all over the place. It'd be a hard time to even think of all the stuff that I need to say here. The meetings that you guys had after the fact, wonderful that you took our input, made a couple of changes, but we were not in on the planning. The horizon, Jenks horizon, is anybody that I've ever asked that didn't live in Jenks, I said, what would you think if you said Jenks horizon? They say, well, maybe they were doing a nursing home build-up. I mean, horizon, what does that mean? Okay, the problem with that is that we went to that first meeting you had at the aquarium. We gave our information, we gave our input on what we thought was needed in the city, and we never heard another word from that. We gave our information to contact us, everything that we could possibly do, and we never contacted again. The only reason we found out about this whole rezoning thing was because somebody was at the December 9th thing, and she had found out about it. She got the little slip in the mail. We get all the time that says Joe wants to rezone his house or rezone his property. We just don't look at everything. I think transparency would have been doing what they could have done, because we've read all the laws. We know that it's legal for the city to do that. That's not an issue here. The fact is it a good idea and was it handled correctly is my main problem. And I don't believe any of it was handled correctly. I don't think that any of you know everything about this UDO or what it's going to do to the people that are in it, and we don't know. But the problem is that we weren't involved in it. Part of their mission statement on their website is saying that they work with the current business owners. We heard that there was business owners at one of the meetings that y'all had. None of them were in the affected area that I know of because I went door to door. Not one person except for the girl that you were talking about that has the shack in front of her back of her house or back of her building. She's the only one because she's on the chamber. It's the only reason she knew about it. No one else up and down Main Street, up and down A Street, knew anything about this. This was 2 weeks ago. So transparency is not good. When we went and we talked, my wife talked to you on the phone, and right after that, everybody started getting notices, and that's why people started coming to some of the meetings. That was about a month or so ago. Until then, we had no idea what was going on. So if you feel comfortable that we were involved in this process and you want to vote this in, so be it. But I'm done with the city of Jenks. I just don't think it's handled correctly. The whole thing has been terrible. And there are so many things that I could bring up that were said by House Levine, you guys, Chris, that just weren't done that way. And it just was all after the fact. We should have been involved in the planning of this, not railroaded into it 3 years after. So if you think that's fair, vote it in. If you have a conscience, I would think I would vote with my conscience.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, great, okay.
He's old.
I got a minute.
Yes, sir.
when I got a phone call Thursday from our side, she said that we were going to be out of the DC at that point, from 5th Street to 7th Street. And she said the reasons were because they wanted to do more drainage studies and traffic studies and that. I don't know if you've noticed, but the only place we don't have drains is from the railroad tracks to 4th Street on Main Street. There's not a drain there. And if you've ever been, after a rain, go across the railroad tracks, look to the left, if you're going that direction, there's a huge puddle there that blocks part of the lane, and nobody can park there for 4 or 5 days if it's a big rain. So there's no drainage there. Why are we not, I'm great with us not being zoned, but why are we not zoning our property that has drains? And the traffic is the same on all the streets because we're on the same streets. So why is that study needed for that and not needed for the downtown core that is going to be done? It just seems like we're doing things backwards. And the studies that were not done need to be done before you do this, not after you. And I was down there Saturday trying to drive through town. There was one event at the school, a cheerleading event. It took me almost 15 minutes to get from 5th Street to Elm. So much traffic going both ways. And then I thought, well, I'll just go back A Street, or excuse me, B Street, because it goes that way. Couldn't get back that way for another 15 minutes. Do you guys know how much traffic is here on the weekend? And if all this stuff you're doing actually works, where are all the people going to drive and park? There's no parking, not now. And then the only place that you can park in Old Town, you've got no trespassing signs on, and it's your property.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else? Good evening, sir. I believe you know the drill.
Mayor, council members.
I'm sorry, sir, just for those of you that don't.
I'm getting there, Mr. Long. That's my next statement.
Thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name is Wayne Parker, former mayor of Jenks. I live at 132 West, 120th Place South in Jenks. Thank you for the moment to speak to you, and I appreciate your work with the council. My family has been in Jenks for nearly 100 years. The reason I mention this, I was in Mr. Box's seat, and we had a meeting, and I was asked, am I one of the newcomers to Jenks? I was kind of kind to that person and told them they didn't know me, so I'm going to let you know who I am. My grandfather came to Jenks 96 years ago to open a feed store. His son Dewey purchased the store in 1938 and purchased the old school grounds in 1962 and moved his store to that property, which is still in the family and operated as River City Trading Post. Dewey's brother, Merle, operated a Texaco service station across the street at First and Main, and he did so until his retirement 40 years later. He came here after World War II, returned here after World War II to open the station. Another uncle owned a drugstore on Main Street, and I grew up here, graduating from Jenks in 1966. I've seen the city grow from 1,500 people to 25,000 today. I've been very much in favor of growth in Jenks. The council I was a member of developed a master sewer plan, which allowed and encouraged growth south of Polecat Creek, paid off the PSO water line, which added revenue to the water department, removed Main Street traffic congestion by renewing the comprehensive plan and establishing the route for Creek Turnpike. And that was done through undeveloped land. We also finished the modern sewer plant and built this building. The term gentrification, I don't know if it'll work. heard a lot, so I looked it up. It was coined in 1964 by British sociologist Ruth Glass when referring to the alterations she observed in social structure and housing markets in certain areas of inner London. Glass observed, one by one, many of the working class quarters have been invaded by the middle class, upper and lower. Once this process of gentrification starts in a district, it goes on rapidly until all or most of the working class occupiers are displaced and the whole social structure, the whole social character of the district has changed. That was by Mrs. Glass in 1964. My concern is with changing of the social structure of Jenks as some of the things. I am not opposed to the upgrade of building materials and appearances in the downtown area, as this new UDO wants to do, or the master plan. I think it's something we started working on back in the 80s. I am opposed to the overlay ordinance as it is being proposed. It's restrictive, does not encourage, in my opinion, investment. The comprehensive plan is that, a plan. A plan, as many people know, is only as good until you start executing it, and then things change. That was proven in World War II when they invaded Normandy. It's not an absolute direction. Laws in the U.S. are by agreement by the citizenry, and hopefully with trust. This zoning is without the landowner's request. To this date, the property owners had a trust in the city of Jenks that their zoning would be unchanged unless they requested a different zoning. This is the way it's been since '72 when the zoning ordinances in Jenks were established. Developers and investors had trust in the city that they invest their money and they would remain as it was zoned. An investor must have trust. I'm sorry. This is a very complicated document. It's not clear where existing uses fall into the new zoning. There needs to be a chart comparing the existing zoning uses with what is going on in the new zoning. To my knowledge, that has not been created. I have 2 other points. I'm not going to them. 3 others. Please table this ordinance for a month or 2 to further gain the property owner's trust or vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Anyone else? Any other business owner or resident who would like to speak as it relates to tonight's vote, item 10? If not, yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Please state your full name and address, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sam Root. I live at 10533 South 71st East Avenue in Tulsa. Before I discuss what I'm here for, I want to give you a little bit of a background of who I am and where my experience is coming from. I have been a city councilor for the city of Tulsa from 1996 to 2006. I served for 10 years on the city council. I was the chairman of the city council in the year 2000. Also in 2006, I was the chief administrative officer for the city of Tulsa under Mayor LaFortune, now Judge LaFortune. So I just wanted to give you that background of my experience with the city. I noticed that your packet has 465 pages this evening. I'm here to tell you I regularly had packets that were that large. We met every single week, and we discussed some very contentious issues, as you probably have watched on TV or in the newspaper over the years with the city council. And rarely did we vote unanimously on anything. There was usually dissent of some sort. And so that's the way democracy really is supposed to work. I'm here tonight to, first of all, congratulate you on your comprehensive plan. The City of Tulsa does comprehensive plans for different sections of the city all the time. And it's just that plan. And you've bothered to come up with a comprehensive plan. I congratulate you for that. That's what cities should do. But during my time on the city council in Tulsa, we even occasionally changed categories of zoning, individual here or there, but not wholesale like you're about to do here. Also, during my time on the city council, we only changed zoning when the owner or his agent asked us to change the zoning. And we had some pretty contentious zoning discussions at the city of Tulsa. But never did we ever impose zoning on people as you are proposing to do with your rezoning. We left it. When we come up with a comprehensive plan, it was for a 20-year period or more, and we relied on voluntary changing of people's zoning by the developers and current owners. And it happened over time, generally speaking. There's a comprehensive plan for East Tulsa, which I used to represent, which is going on now in the city of Tulsa. My concern this evening is that you are taking away the individual property owner's free will and choice, free agency, to come to you and ask for a zoning change because you are imposing a zoning change on some people. To my knowledge, that's never been done in the state of Oklahoma before. And you are about to set what I perceive is a very bad precedent for the state of Oklahoma. I would suggest, and I urge you, to change it from imposing it using your police action to voluntary. Leave the zoning as you have done with your UDO, but allow the business owners or the new developers to choose to move that way based on your comprehensive plan. A good developer, when it comes in here, will see the comprehensive plan and say, oh, that's where they're trying to go. I'm ready to buy some property, and by the way, if I buy this property, I'm going to ask if we can change the zoning to the new zoning that you have proposed. Now, he can get together with the current property owner and act as their agent or whatever. In other words, it originates from the property owner or the people concerned with the property, not an imposition that you are getting ready to do. I think it's a very bad precedent. I would also ask that you please ask Levine if they have ever done anything similar to this for any other city in the state of Oklahoma. And I heard his discussion about zoning and legality of it, and what you're doing this evening may or may not be legal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Anyone else?
Yes.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor. Council, my name is Stephen Gray. I'm an attorney in Broken Arrow. My address is 2400 West Detroit, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And there are some people I've known here for too many years. They remember when I had a hairline and a lot less waistline, but we won't go there. But in any event, I want to introduce myself. I realize most of you don't know who I am or what my background is. I've been an attorney for almost 42 years. I was a municipal attorney handling strictly eminent domain matters for the city of Tulsa for 6 years. I've been outside counsel for the city of Wasso, the city of Holdenville, the city of Broken Arrow, for the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, and for the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
I've handled condemnation cases both in federal court and state court, and I have represented property owners in the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and I've handled cases all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. I have published articles in the Oklahoma Bar Journal on at least 2 occasions related to eminent domain. I've made numerous presentations to the Oklahoma Association of Municipal Attorneys on eminent domain matters, as well as the Southwestern Legal Foundation down in Dallas, Texas. Currently, I'm handling at least 3 eminent domain actions in Oklahoma, but I will tell you, I've handled eminent domain actions in almost 19 counties in the state, from Delaware County down to McCurtain County, which is Broken Bow, Delaware County, which is the Jay and Grove area, all the way down to Cotton County, which is close. The biggest city is Wichita Falls, Texas. I'm no lightweight on eminent domain. With regard to my worthy adversary's comments about the legality of this, I'm not sure which law school he went to, but the case law in the United States Supreme Court has radically changed since 1926. Starting with the first evangelical Lutheran case in 1980 and moving forward, the cases now recognize something called a regulatory taking case. And there are 2 types of regulatory taking cases. One is a total taking where you wipe out all economic uses. And I find that many city employees and elected officials think that's what a regulatory taking is. There's also something called a partial regulatory taking. This has been recognized by the United States Supreme Court and does not have the strictures of a total taking. Furthermore, this type of taking is being recognized throughout the United States in various cases, in various states. I would direct your attention to the case of State XREL AWMS Water Solutions versus Mertz. It's from the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio, but explicitly cites United States Supreme Court and various federal court cases, and basically talks about a partial taking. It says a regulation that prohibits less than all economically beneficial use of land falls outside of Lucas's categorical rule and into the Penn Central case, the 3-factor analysis. The Lucas case is the case that stands for a regulatory taking, you gotta wipe out all economic uses. That is not what a regulatory taking is in the United States today. They recognize there is a partial regulatory taking, and that's under the Penn Central, and they look at 3 factors. Number 1 is the economic impact of the regulation on the claimant. Number 2, the extent to which the regulation has interfered with the direct, distinct investment-backed expectations of the property owner. Number 3, the character of the governmental action. You have the right as a city to exercise the police powers for the public health, safety, and welfare. But that is not a carte blanche to begin intruding upon a property owner's rights. This case goes on to talk about how you measure damages in a partial regulatory taking is what was the value of the property before the regulation, and what is the value of the property after the regulation. I heard unsubstantiated statements by your expert that he thought the property would be worth more money. But in the previous meetings that I've been to at the Planning Commission, etc., not once was there ever any economic analysis of how this proposed ordinance was going to impact these individual property owners. I would ask you, and I would affirm Councilor Roop's statement, either in the former mayor, either defer this matter or vote no, because you are going to force a lot of property owners to go to the last avenue of a resort, and you may not like where they're going to take you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. My name's Rhonda Bender, and I live at 6839 East 105th Street. May I approach with some handouts?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'll give you mine. share this. Here is a packet that I actually presented at the December 9th meeting for the Planning Commission. Besides showing all the deeds of dedication to the land that my dad and my mom have given to the city of Jenks since 1993 or so, I also included, which is the first part of your packet, broker's opinion, and it showed the devaluation of my land if this zoning goes from the commercial general that I currently have to the RTC zoning. So I wanted you to have a copy of that, because I presented that December 9th, and I think some people said that nobody had received anything like that. 2 weeks ago, I also presented a demographic study from your website that showed you that many of the businesses that you are disallowing in the new zoning, in fact, are leaking into other communities to spend their money. And even though there's a few parcels that have been cherry-picked out of the rezoning as of last Thursday, it still does hold true to this rezoning. It's taking out that demographic study that shows all the things, the gasoline stations, the building supplies, the mechanical, the auto body, all that stuff. And so even by taking out a couple of the rezoning, it would still have the same problem. I also gave you on the next handout is an 8-page handout, but this is my current zoning code right now. It's chapter 10 on the use units on the website. And so I put in this spreadsheet that I gave to you, is 8 pages, and it shows on the left side all the uses that I have right now before you change my zone. On the left side, or the right side, it shows what my new zoning is going to be. And it's 8 pages, and I highlighted the ones that I felt like were more important to me. In addition, I can't say this enough, that the only parcel that I can find anywhere in the state of Oklahoma that is zoned RTC is the failing Alamo. And that does not excite me to know that I'm losing all these uses, and that's what my new zone is going to be, because it doesn't seem like it's worked out very well so far. As I mentioned in the March 22nd meeting when I spoke to you all, the comprehensive plan alignment study only mentioned upzoning properties. Still to date, I cannot find one place in the city's documentation that they talked about downzoning our properties. I open record requested the meeting sign-in sheets for all the meetings that you guys just saw. I got not one sign-in sheet, not one meeting minute from 2019, from 2020, all the way to the fall of 2021. And I became aware of this the day before Thanksgiving. So there's sign-in sheets from that date forward, but all the pictures that you saw and all the meetings, they can't come up with one sign-in sheet or one meeting minute. And I also included that, I did not include that, but I was wanting to see what business owners had actually attended. I just wanted, because I also open requested the surveys that they talked about, the 300 and some odd and the 450. I asked for the surveys. They said there were 11 business owners surveyed. I got not one survey on my open record request. Another open record request that was due last week was a list of the properties being rezoned. Our clerk had indicated previously that in the RTC, which I'd identified 40 parcels, that there were approximately 30 being rezoned. I wanted a list of them. I also asked for the DC parcels that the clerk had indicated there was about 115 properties being rezoned. So we're close to 145-ish. And I included the email and I highlighted, we do not have a list of addresses that are being rezoned. So if you tell me, how can you say that you notified people when you can't even present a list of the properties being rezoned? Now, I did get labels, incog labels, and that really is not at all what the open request was asking. 1 through 145 addresses. I wanted to know. I got none. And you have a couple of other things in here, but I'll let you look at those. But you are leaving us no alternatives. I have fought for 4 months, and you have unanimously passed this through every time. So you're leaving no alternative but for us to pursue legal relief. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Bender. sir. How are you?
I am great. Good evening, council. My name is Dr. John Irvin, 12524 South 15th Court here in Jenks. I don't own any property. I've been here for 5 years. I've been here about 5 years. I haven't been here for 100 years. But I would like to say anything that changes what happens when I like to go get my oil changed, get my car worked on, and then leave, take a walk downtown, have lunch, do a little bit of shopping. Anything that changes that, I'm not in favor of it. I think automotive is a good thing to have down there, and I just like to, as a customer, say that. Thanks.
Thank you.
She has 4 bodyguards, so I thought I'd hold her up.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Hi, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, council members. I'm Bonnie Ragland. My address is 11001 South 77th East Place in Tulsa. My husband and I lived in Jenks for over 35 years and owned the business here for 25 years. My husband believed in investing in property and thought putting one's money in land would be a profitable and safe way to invest. I learned 4 months ago that you were proposing to rezone my property against my wishes. My husband passed away this past year and was leaving this land for my 401k. I can tell you for sure he would have been against this rezoning as it will devalue my land, and I bet my property taxes will increase also. I'm asking you here tonight to please not rezone my property. Would you want this to happen to your mother? I don't think so. If you do rezone, you are leaving me no choice but to pursue legal avenues for relief.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradley. I'm sorry to hear the passing of your husband. Anyone else? Good evening, sir. How are you?
Kevin Hampshire, 603 East 8, 35 years. I don't own the property, I rent it. We chose Jenks because of one bridge in, one highway out, no crime, no traffic. They got a big bridge and they widen the road, and now it's just a mess. I can't imagine anymore. I've traveled the United States building restaurants and remodeling hotels. And my boss called and said, well, how do you like Houston? I said, it looks like Fredericksburg. There's a Hooters, there's a, is this gonna be my street? I'm gonna be gentrified out, I guess. I've lived here and coached 31 seasons of youth sports here. My retirement was just to stay here and watch in my small part what I helped build. I've heard everybody talk about a lot of different things, but at what cost? That's what I said and listened. There's a lot of legal and financial problems tied into this, but what are the intangibles that I'm just going to have to move on down the highway? And I think that would be a great loss for both me and Jenks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Very well. I have a last minute request from a couple that lives at 1704 Disregard. They don't want their name spoken, so I won't give their address either. Mayor Corey Box, it was refreshing. I'm speaking on their behalf. It was refreshing to hear about the new development in downtown Jenks. We have investment property in Jenks, which we have held onto for the last 15 years. Needless to say, it has been a disappointment in that the downtown still looks tired and outdated since the current businesses don't take pride in appearances and Riverwalk still has not gotten off the ground. We are planning to slowly divest our 4 rental homes for greener pastures. We will be watching the progress of this downtown project and we'll stop selling if the project actually starts to move forward. Thank you for trying to develop Jenks into a better place. This is an example There are many, however, I'm not going to speak on anyone's behalf if they didn't allow us to do that. So we'll, one more chance, we'll open the floor one more time before we close. Anyone like to speak on behalf of item number 10? Business owner, resident, or otherwise? Last minute jitters, somebody. All right, the floor is closed to the public. We open the floor to the council. I believe Councilor.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess. It is 8 o'clock sharp. We will return at 5 after 8. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Nolan, to take a recess.
I don't, it doesn't require it
No.
by our rules now.
Okay.
Since I don't know by Robert's rules.
after 8. My apologies for the long break. We will resume once everyone is seated. We're going to, before we open the floor to council, we're going to reopen the floor to our staff. And I believe we're going to begin with Mrs. Hilton. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. I'll touch on a couple of things, and then if I don't hit them all, then I will gladly let someone else answer them in my absence. So in regards to the timeline and the zoning, I think it was a yes. The notices went out to everyone in the downtown core, and this was a point of contention for myself. I wanted to make sure that there was transparency. I feel very badly that people have developed a lack of trust, and I hate that. In November, it was decided that we would officially, even though state statute did not require it, we would send out a notice to all the property owners, and that's how this all started, and how we ended up having additional meetings because notices were sent, notices were received, and people did show up. So I can't account for, in any case, if people read their notices, open their mail, or any of that. I did ask you, hey, we're getting a lot of questions. Do you think that we should have more meetings? And you said, do what you think is best for the citizens. I did have more meetings. It was very important to me to engage the public, to find out what their concerns were, to make sure that their voices were heard. We scheduled 2 open houses. That was already scheduled. We scheduled some additional hearings, and then I also set up office hours and met with the individuals that I knew had specific questions. A lot of the changes, probably all the changes, I did. I recommended it to be approved as was from the beginning, but we made lots of changes per our 4 months of conversation. So even though someone maybe wasn't involved 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, they have been involved for 4 months, and we have listened, and we have made tremendous and very significant changes. Things that I understand zoning and planning, and just because a property, we talk about this just about every single council meeting, just because I have a property and I rezone it, doesn't mean that anything changes, period. It just doesn't. Nothing happens until I develop that property. And in these cases, if you have a business, that business stays just the way it is. Nothing changes. If they want to change it, then they tear it down, then you go by the new rules. That's it. And if you do that, I am not aware of anyone outside of, I would say, Mr. The gentleman who owns Cecil Tires. That's the only use that someone could not do moving forward, but we have removed that from the UDO. So between 1st and 2nd Street, you're not going to get a car wash or a gasoline station. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get a strip club. You're not going to get a tattoo parlor. You're not going to get an animal hospital between 1st and 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th Street. It's not going to happen. The build form for those blocks represents a traditional 1900s downtown, and it will continue to represent a traditional 1900s downtown. The property owners, if you have a 50 by 50 lot, you'll now be able to build a 50 by 50 building. That doesn't devalue your property. That allows you more buildable area. If you're on Main Street, you no longer have to provide parking. You can provide parking. If your business, if you feel like if you want to put in a high-end steakhouse, and that high-end steakhouse, you already know in advance that your customers want to park relatively close, then you can put in parking. We're not keeping you from putting in parking, so there's no diminishing of value there. We originally said if your building or your lot was vacant and you wanted to build on it, that it needed to be 2 stories, and we changed that because people felt like that was too hard, and especially if maybe I inherited my land, I'm just giving a hypothetical, and I don't have a big pot of money, I have a little pot of money, and I wanna do something, I can do one story. And we said, we really, really, really desperately need retail, desperately. So everything on the ground floor has to be retail. But the people said, no, that's not fair. So we said, okay, we'll change it. You can have offices. So I hope there's some great offices that come. We've made huge concessions, huge. And by right, previously you could go 35 feet in the city of Jenks, or you have to use a special tool like a PUD, etc. Now by right, in the downtown core, you can build 85 feet. It sounds like a monster, but it's not even that tall, like once you see the building. So I'm very happy that we had 4 months of meetings. If it were up to me, I thought, Mr. Carr will attest to this, I thought we would adopt this in September. I was wrong. So I did send out the notices. I sent out more letters in February, had more meetings, had lots of conversations. I know you all are so tired of getting emails from me. I have forwarded you all the comments, the concerns from the citizens that you represent. I've done everything that I feel like I could do to represent the public to the council, to represent the public to the planning commission. I feel very good about the additional 4 months. It has not been easy for my staff of Brandon and myself. So to be perfectly honest, there's been a lot of balls dropped in the last few months trying to take care of all the requests that we've received, all the emails, all the phone calls, the additional meetings, the night meetings, and then sitting and editing a document. So on Main Street, things will happen incrementally. It's not like we rezone something and tomorrow everybody's out of business and moving somewhere else. It doesn't happen like that. Rezoning doesn't change your business. What it changes is the opportunity for the next person who comes along. And I think that it's a fair document and a solid document, and I still support it after 4 months.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Any questions, or actually, no, let's pause that. We can, anybody else from staff? I'll come back.
I just wanted to touch on something real quick about, the comments about the drainage, traffic, and crime, and the potential for this, the comp plan and the UDO affecting those. We're in the process of a drainage plan, master plan for the general downtown area south of downtown that'll expand in scope over time. We also have a draft document of a traffic plan for the entire city. We were trying to look out 5, 10, 20 years on what we think growth and build out will be, the number of cars that will be on the road, and the capacity of the existing streets. Something that came out of this conversation with the folks that live in between 5th and 7th in the downtown core was the one-way streets and how that affects businesses and potential uses. We're going to look at that and see, does Main Street have to be one way all the way from 5th to the bridge? Does A Street have to be one way all the way from the bridge to, I believe, Date? So these are things that we're looking at. We have we're working on the drainage study. We're almost done with the traffic study. Crime, something that Marseille touched on is, when you have growth like an outlet mall or big box stores along Highway 75, those developments are going to have a significant higher impact on crime rates than anything that's going to happen in the downtown core when you have incremental growth on small lots. So if we have big box stores coming in, that immediately could have more, we could have more demand from public safety related to that versus when you think about the downtown core and another restaurant going in or another office going in and the number of people that are visiting that. So I'm not concerned about specifically the downtown core as it relates to public safety and any potential development in the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Strout. Thank you, Mrs. Nola. Did you have?
I just wanted to clarify a couple of legal issues to let you all know before we started discussing. First, Mr. Gray discussed regulatory takings, and generally I completely agree with his analysis of the case law right up until the end, when he implied to you that deciding whether there's a regulatory taking is so simple as we look at a property and we say, what was it worth before and what was it worth after, and now you have to pay that amount. That's not the way the courts work. As he said first, this is a balancing test. And the court is going to look at the nature of the regulation as well as the value of the property and how it's affected. And here we have a regulation that aligns with the comprehensive plan, aligns with the strategic plan. It's designed specifically to suit the nature of the buildings in the area, to increase the quality of life, increase aesthetics. We have a very appropriate regulation here. Also, courts have repeatedly looked at zoning laws and said it's very, very difficult for a zoning law to ever constitute a regulatory taking. And that there certainly may sometimes be incidental decreases in value. And that's a regular give and take when we live in a city and we have regulations. Landowners regularly are benefited by city development and city regulation. And we don't make them come and pay the city for these improvements and these increases in value to their property, just like there might be an incidental decrease in value. Then I'd like to talk about, Ms. Bender presented you with a broker's opinion of value from December. First of all, this is a broker's opinion, and as you can see in the letter, he was interested in co-listing this property. This is not a disinterested opinion of value. Also, it's from December. And as you know, we've made several major concessions to Ms. Bender in this time, allowing drive-throughs, allowing multi-use, multi-tenant, and further things. Also, you notice nowhere in this does it talk about the benefits that the RTC zoning is providing here. I can't get really technical with this. I know Marseille could, though. She has a property with not a lot of developable area. The RTC zoning makes these setbacks much less, increases the opportunity for much more dense zoning, for larger footprints, and that's going to be a major benefit and will help her develop this property. Also, we don't know what information she provided to them. It doesn't look like she provided this information on the setbacks and density. This is not an economic analysis that you need to be relying on this evening. She also implied that maybe there's been some Open Records Act violations, and I want to clear that up because we take following the law and transparency really seriously. House of Levine is not a governmental entity. They are not subject to the Open Records Act. They are a contractor, a vendor, a consultant. They aren't our legal representative. So their records are their records. We provide anything that the city keeps here. And we have been doing that and are working on doing that. As we have stated that we do not keep, we don't have a full list of addresses of the properties being rezoned. That's because when we sent legal notices, we sent them to the owners of the property. And that's why we provided the labels. That's how we provided notice. We also have maps of the property. We've also provided that. We don't keep signed up sheets for the meetings that House of Levine did a long time ago. Also, there are no due dates under the Open Record Act. We have an obligation to provide prompt, reasonable access. We have provided thousands of documents so far in response to multiple open records requests and are continuing to. We've followed up. We've gotten documents that we couldn't find, we didn't know about before, and we're continuing to. So those are just a couple things I wanted to point out to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nolan. Any other comments or questions from staff? Is that it? Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll close the floor to our staff members. We will open the floor to our city council, and we will start on the right side. Councilor Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let me start off and tell you, I am counselor for Ward 1, which all of this has taken place. And I have not been to any meeting except the public meetings, and I'll get to that. In 2019 is when I spoke to the Planning Commission, City Council regarding the development at 3rd Aquarium Drive. It became apparent that no one on either body knew any of the challenges related to the development of original town. As one friend said to me, and she's here, it will not do any good to speak. They will all go, yes, yes, yes. I realized today pretty much how correct she was. My platform for running was economic development. Through the years, and I have been here 50 plus years. I raised my boys here. I've been involved in different areas here, just like Mr. Parker. So through the years, I have watched the school system grow. The sad part is Jenks had not kept up with the growth by working on the economic development part to bring meeting places to the school. We've lost millions of tax dollars because of that. After school events of any type, which all are well supported by the citizens, they would take their money east across the bridge and north to Tulsa Hills. And my question on that was why? After I started watching, then we developed the soccer fields out on Elwood. Then we developed the Town West baseball. We're talking thousands of people and thousands of loss of tax dollars because our city chose not to keep up with the economic development to provide me those. Another part of how sad, whenever I was running, I identified the building blocks that we had. And the bet was beginning was the aquarium, the school system, and Riverwalk. But nobody had promoted anything, nobody had advertised Jenks. There was beautiful land that was waiting to be developed at the aquarium. My question there is, why has it taken so many years? House on Levine was presented to the city council in the middle of 2019. Just after 3 new councilors were elected, myself included. The presentation was by the city manager, Mr. Christopher Shrout. And at that time, our planning commissioner was Mr. Jim Beach. It was not Marseille. They had said, whenever they talked to council, meeting Mr. Shrout and Mr. Beach, that they had done several interviews. But to my knowledge, there was no city council, no city staff, other than those two involved in the interviews. Council at that time chose to go ahead and to contract with House on Levine. As I just shared with you, my whole thing was economic development. I saw places in this town that could be developed. One of the places was the run-down shopping center just west of Elm. I had a very strong vision for that, and that's what I told. Met with Mr. Shrout. I told him, I said, Jenks has missed one of the most pieces of land that was developable. Bonnie knows it's over there where her and Ron had their drugstore. So, consequently, somebody else saw my vision too, and now you saw the beautiful improvement. All it takes sometimes is just a vision. It doesn't take all this hoo-ha-ha. So, Mr. Jim Beach left the position as city planner. The city hired Marseille Hilton for the position of city planner. This is about a year after we had already been working with House on Levine, and a lot of this had already been set up whenever she came as an employee. I think Mr. Carr, our current assistant city manager, and Mr. Shrout, but I think Mr. Carr hired her. During the orientation, Ms. Hilton was informed that public meetings had taken place, which is true, because I attended every one of them. It's my town, my ward, my friends, my community. The first one was at the aquarium with a large number of, and it was packed out, a large number of citizens at the aquarium. If you've ever been to the aquarium and you first walk in, you see that very large amphitheater room. It was packed. I was a little bit surprised that I was excited because I like for citizens to get involved. I very much promote that because this is citizens' town. Then there was a citizens action group that was formed, and councilors could choose members for the citizen action, or we called it the CAC. This was all for the comprehensive plan. The UDO had not really been talked about at that point in time. We were still in the middle of working on the comprehensive plan. So when you hear public meetings were held, you know the difference. The difference between the comprehensive plan and the difference between the UDO meetings. It's two separate entities there. So think about Ms. Hilton being oriented and walking into this massive project. She, as she stood and as she told you how over the past 4 months when she realized that there had been a ball dropped, and there has been a ball dropped, and I've improved, to communication to the citizens regarding what was going on. And you know what? She is absolutely right. She has burned the candle at both ends to make sure that the citizens and businesses affected by this have had every opportunity to speak. I do believe that citizens that was most affected by the UDO had not been notified of any public meetings. But to the best of my knowledge, the UDO meeting started with the UDO committee and not with citizens. That committee, I do not know, and I've asked several times from different people who made up the committee. And the best that I can tell you that made up the committee was people outside of Jenks. I will hear of their expertise, but I never heard who they were. And I think that everybody should know who the committee was that made all these recommendations with the UDO. Complaints have been made that Ms. Hilton has not been answering emails to the citizens making complaints. I ask you, seriously, how many emails had she answered? And she didn't answer one, and you complain? Think about it. Thank you, Ms. Hilton, for the hard work you have put in on this. You made sure you walked Beaver Street, you and your husband, and you personally took your Saturday to cut flyers on the doors to make sure. Because you see, original town, whereas all of this has taken place, we have a lot of retired people there, and they can't afford to have social media. Most of them have, elderly who have flip phones, and what's in those flip phones is emergency numbers to their children in case they get into trouble. So I would venture to say that over half of Sanco, which is original town, didn't get a notification. When we had a council meeting, and I'm going to share this with you too, the drainage study. The drainage study that you've heard about. I dealt with drainage down there and talking to city for 2 years since I sat in this council seat with multiple documentation. It took me finally retaining my own engineer. After I retained Mr. Ed Mize, and thankful to the mayor, he rode around and he looked at the issue and several things that Ed pointed out. He conferenced with Mr. Cloyd, who I have the deepest respect for, but he was new to his position too, because Mr. Carr got promoted, or no, our city engineer at that time left the position. So they hired Mr. Cloyd. Well, I had been talking with Mr. Carr about all the issues that Sandville had on the infrastructure. So that's why, since Mr. Cloyd reported to Mr. Carr, I went ahead and retained my own, so that we could do, because when you go developing in Sandville that has no storm system except ditches, you're gonna get flooding that's already there. It's gonna increase. So Ed helped in getting some things done with the drainage study, because he brought forth things that needed to be addressed for the safety of the neighborhood and the safety of their property. I tell you, whenever House on the Bean came, I was impressed. Not that they're not now, they can only do what they're told. But I was impressed with them, and I was excited about the opportunity to really look at bringing development to Jenks. So much could be done here, so much. And I voted, to contract with them. I'm gonna pass these out to council. I want council to see what I'm talking about. Brandon, I want you to take one, put it in the minutes, please. So what I have here, and I brought it to Mr. Shrout, I brought it to Mr. Carr. Every 3 years, DEQ requires that the city does water testing. Okay? So every 3 years, our town has to test water. And I'm doing this because I want everybody to see, as I brought it to them, the original town of Jenks is an island. Every one of those dots outside of Jenks South, even some west, there's only one dot in the farthest north you can go for the city limits. And then there's only one other dot in the farthest north you can go, which is Melody Lane. Original town has never been tested until I brought this to their attention. Then I called the DEQ and talked to them, because I thought DEQ was the one that made the choices on where to test. Well, I had a great conversation with Mr. Stephen Thibodeau, and he explained the whole process to me. I came back, and I had been talking to the engineer that I was going to retain. And I came back, and I spoke again with Mr. Carr, Mr. Shrout, and that I had talked with DEQ after he told me the city is the one that made the choices on who to test. I thought, well, that's interesting. So, I talked with the engineer, Mr. Ed Mize, and he told me, he said, watch out. He said, they're going to flush the fire hydrant. Well, lo and behold, the day before 4 houses was chosen in Sanko. Public Works was there flushing the hydrant at 3rd and Beaver. They purposely brought, because of our drainage problem, they brought a backhoe to dig out the ditch to make sure that the water could flow south, like it always does. So I want you all to look at this. Listen to them. Nobody was notified. Nobody. That, I believe, with every ounce of my being. Because the only ones that were notified were the ones south. Everybody south, because we had a large group.
Notified of what?
Pardon?
Notified of what? What were they not notified of? Are you talking about a study or the UDO?
Talking about the original first meeting of House on Levine at the aquarium.
Okay, thank you.
I think Karen
Nope,
and Thomas were never there.
So that's what I'm talking about. And so then as we go forward, I'll just talk about the drainage and notification. Drew, let me back up just a second. There is a council meeting when Mr. Cloyd said that we were going to have a drainage study. And at that council meeting, I reminded everybody about the lack of ability to notify Senko, because this all has to do with Senko. And he told me that they were already working on flyers and he had done this, had made flyers and stuff. So we get closer and closer to the meeting for drainage for Senko. Well, I didn't get a flyer, I didn't get anything, my neighbors weren't getting anything. I'm saying, I want everybody to know so that they can talk. Because they talk to me, now this is their opportunity to talk to somebody. So, consequently, there was no flyers. And so, I think there was either a media or a text that went out. I don't remember how the notification was. And I was glad to see, I was surprised, but I was very happy to see the turnout at council, or at the Hive. So, and the only reason I bring this up is notification. So then, when I got to the Hive, and everybody was there, and I still was, in my mind, I was like, how did this happen? Knowing my neighborhood, because I can tell you just about everybody in the neighborhood. And those that are here know I can. So I just let it drop. We got the study, we got the contract with, and for the storm system, which I had been asking for quite a while. Then, 6 months later, approximately 6 months later, on a Saturday night, I get a call from a young lady, and she was just letting me have it. She had just found out about the UDO, and how I should have known, how I should have notified her, why she didn't get a text like she did for the drainage study. Then I realized what had happened. Text went out. So the ones in the neighborhood that have no phone, no media, didn't get notified. So I say all this because the people, the community that is impacted by this the most are left out. Just like in the water, simple water test. City Hall used to be called People's House. I don't know what happened. I hardly ever hear the word citizen anymore. But what I do hear is political capital, which my definition is political power. Now, if you live south of Jenks or even west, you're considered political capital. If you have 4 counselors in your circle, that's political capital, political power, because that 4 is the magic number. 4 is the magic number because that's a quorum. And this goes for anybody in leadership, from Mr. Carr, Mr. Shrout. I don't know about staff below. I don't deal with them. So that is political capital. Now, if you live in Old Town, it is my wholehearted belief, myself included. Remember, I'm the counselor for Old Town. That now, if you live in Old Town, it is my wholehearted belief, myself included, that we are a political liability. This is after 3 years on council. It's not an assumption. And the things that I've tried to do for Old Town. Now, they're going to say that they revamped Lions Park, which is the original park of Jenks. And I am ever so grateful for that, because Sanko, they had neglected it for so long that it was full of sandburrs. The kids used to go down there from all over town and play tennis, which has now been changed to a pickleball court. Families go down there now and play. And it wasn't an easy project for me to get done. So it is green space now in Sanko, and it is the original park that Jenks ever had. And And there's probably people that can testify when the park used to be. Families went down there, now it is for the whole family, and I'm very, very grateful for that to have been done. The second thing that they're gonna say that they did, which they did, and I'm ever so grateful for that, but then there's a caveat to it. They're gonna say that they fixed drainage in front of my house. Because I brought to them actual video and pictures of actual flooding of crawl space from Second Street all the way to Third Street. 4 houses was impacted to the point you couldn't see the driveway. I even held traffic back while one truck got out of the ditch that was flooding because you couldn't see the driveway. So at that point, with the previous engineer, all of this has to do not with Mr. Cloyd, but it has to do with Mr. Robinson, our previous engineer. And I worked with him. Finally, we came to where it was fixed. So there was a staff member and the contractor that stood at the end of the driveway. And they said this will never be fixed until they dig out the other side of Duncan. That'll fix everything upstream. I said, no, I said, that can't be. I said, you know. So we experienced one flood after another. Ed came in, Mr. Mize, and he did a whole evaluation of Sandco. And what was the first thing he said? 30 minutes in a backhoe, and we'll fix all the flooding upstream. It took me 2 years to get that accomplished for 30 minutes. Then I get a call on Labor Day weekend last year telling me how they had dug out everything. So I say all of this, this is to tell you how the original town of Jenks has been treated. Not just because it's me, but my neighbors. That's the ones at 3rd and Comanche. Roy, who some of you know, that's Tulsa County, that lives at 5th and Comanche, he just stopped me the other day because I was over at the park. He said, when are you going to fix the drainage down here? And then he was talking about his driveway flooding. So I'm just saying to you guys, I know you guys are upset and you bring some very valid points. I'll go to the UDO process many times, and I have been told by more than one person that I could attend any meeting at City Hall I wanted to. I asked to attend UDO meetings and things to do because, again, if you look at the map, it has to do with original town. Not to do anything, but nobody knows the personality of original town like I do, like some of you all do. And that was to give input. That was to just come to the table. That's what I campaigned on. That was where my heart was for economic development. Not to whack anybody over the head, but my frustration just grew and grew and grew with the lack of attention placed on original town and the water and the floods. And that's what happened. But I did, and I never once was invited to attend any of the meetings that went on regarding, and I'm talking about behind closed doors, if you will, or at City Hall with House on Levine. I couldn't get anybody to look at even the infrastructure. I have asked, I can't tell you how many times, and I have emails to prove it. Most everybody up here knows if I make a statement, I can prove it. For a simple evaluation of the lift station. That's all. Because when you go, it's the original lift station. And when you go adding to a lift station that only has 34% reserve, I've got that documentation unless there's new since they gave it to me. It's already been done on the east end of town. That lift station handles everything on the east end of town, all the residents on the south side of Main Street. And so that was the other thing, and that hasn't been done yet to handle the new development that we're wanting to do. The leaders gain political capital by looking the other way. Is that a correct statement?
Councilor Lynn, how much more time do you expect?
Then I will wrap it up then.
Thank you.
Made my point about how original town is here. Let me get to the back here. To me, this is all about freedom. Not that things, and not that you're not right on things, because I do believe you are. But when government goes and tells citizens what they can and cannot do with their property, that's a very slippery slope, in my opinion, to Marxism and socialism. You can own it, but we will tell you how to maintain it and sell it like we tell you to sell it. City government tells you, remember the term political capital. Will this let Jenks city government tell you when you must sell and to whom eventually? I actually kind of call this backdoor eminent domain. So when you come in, because nobody here, nobody that's been involved, just listen to us, not even your counselor. I've been accused of I should know everything, I should have been able to just tell you everything. I've had things said to me, I've had neighbors come over and knock on my door, and I didn't know any more than they did. I've learned the new words, political capital. There's another word I've learned too, and I've observed over time. It's called gaslighting. Do any of y'all think you've experienced any gaslighting? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lynn. Would anyone on staff, I'll go ahead and start with you, Mr. Strout, like to address?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, let's move on. Councilors, those you'd like to be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Councilor Lynn about all the hard work the city has put in this process over the last 3 years, former employees and current employees. And Mrs. Hilton, her dedication to the city is outstanding, exemplary. And the work that she has performed in the last 4 months to carve out certain items to help the people in the downtown area. I do want to tell you a little bit about my resume. Before I was elected to city council, I was on the planning commission for 3 years. And we had to abide by the city zoning, which I hold right here, developed in 2010. It's time for us to let this document evolve. On the planning commission and on city council, we have given special exception after special exception that doesn't comply with these standards set forth. And what I mean by that is the fact that this new UDO will be a living document. It will be modifiable. It has been modified in the last 4 months to comply with citizens' requests. There's nobody out to get you. I've seen the exceptions being requested, and if they're in a uniform manner by developers that are acceptable to the city, the region, best fit, awnings, signs, etc., we can accommodate that. We can accommodate change. We can accommodate requests. This will be a living document, and I will bear the burden of making it a living document if changes are necessary going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilor Isbell. Anyone else? Mr. Short.
I'm going to read this. I think it'd be wise to take a moment and reflect on Jenks as a community. We began as a small rural community nearly 117 years ago. My family moved here 118 years ago. Jenks has grown tremendously in the last 20 years. The population has more than doubled in size and reached our outer boundaries. We have nowhere else to expand to or to develop new. Our future lies in the redevelopment of existing land and buildings. Facts are clear. We have a highly educated, well-resourced, and young population. This equates to very high expectations. The thorough analysis by our city staff and consultants has led us to this moment. We began this journey 3 years ago with resident input and consultant guidance, culminating to this UDO plan. We have spent hundreds of hours gaining wisdom and understanding of our citizens' needs and desires. This UDO provides the vision and the tools for what we want Jenks to look like for the next several generations, not this council. This UDO represents progress and provides economic opportunity to our citizens, their friends and family, and to the visitors of our great city. Based on the entire body of work and effort put into this UDO, I firmly support the UDO as presented. I want to take a minute and thank all the staff for their incredibly difficult and hard work that they've put in, and frankly, the punishment that they've taken. Run this from this council, from the people in this room, people who aren't in this room. I just want to say thank you. Your work has not been missed on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Short. Mr. Klein.
I'll be brief. I haven't prepared any statements, but one thing I ran on a year ago was economic development. And my wife's family goes way back generations in Jenks, back with the Raglands even. And if the Raglands don't leave with a good answer to their situation tonight, I would really like to hear something from the city in the near future and be copied on that. But on economic development, I'm just going to throw out one example of something I'm seeing right now is Little League competitive baseball season is going on. Our Jenks Youth Baseball has really leveled up where they have national tournaments now, and in recent weekends, there may be 140 Little League teams playing in a Jenks tournament. That's a lot of families. That's a lot of people needing restaurants, hotels, etc. Because many of those teams, I would say 100 plus, are not from the Tulsa area. They're from Wichita, they're from Arkansas, Texas, etc. This is just one example of where previous councils, planning commissions, whoever, in my opinion, dropped the ball and not leveled up our development. All of these teams go across the river for restaurants, hotels, and what they need for a weekend. They go to Tulsa Hills. They go into Tulsa. Jenks can't support these things properly. And that's one example. I'm not even talking about what Jenks High School brings in, what type of sports brings in, etc. So I'm kind of looking for something to help level Jenks up economically. I don't think anyone on this council wants to hurt Jenks or our old town or our traditional values. Nobody wants to transform it into something it's not. We just want to get it caught up and a little bit better to serve our citizens' needs. And that's what I've heard from council and from the city for the past 6 months plus when dealing with this UDO. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Anyone else? I'll go ahead and say, and I admire the fact that you guys prepared your remarks, apparently. I should probably start doing that as well. Got me in trouble before. I would say the one thing I want everyone to keep in mind is I agree with both of you. There's nobody here who wishes to harm anybody. It's not part of the plan. I would also say that this gentleman and I have been here for 5 years, and there's hundreds of phone conversations and hundreds of interactions that we have that got us to this point. The UDO and the comprehensive plan is hundreds of people contributed. This is not the city. This is not 7 people that came up with this plan. Hundreds of people told us this is the direction we want to go in. It's unfortunate that we do the very best we can to make sure everybody is represented. I really do believe that. She's exceptional. There's no doubt about it. And I think she's done a remarkable job of making sure everybody's voice is heard. But after 5 years of listening to outside investors, and some of them do not want to be mentioned, saying, hey, I would consider putting millions of dollars into your community, but I won't because of what you guys have done for the last 10 and 15 years, which is kind of, I guess one said it was like the wild, wild west. You have no standards, you give, You work with this guy, you don't work with that guy, and we have to get away from that. We have to walk in here. There's members of the planning commission here, and I pretty much trust them because I think they really, like Councilor Isbell said in their plan, they really dig into this. They look over, they turn these rocks over and look at everything that crawls out from underneath them. They're looking at all these angles. And when she says to me, and I asked her a year ago, when we were getting to know each other, I said, what does it mean when you come to the city council and you say, I recommend that you do this? And she told me exactly what it means. She's the professional that's in this room. And, we let the planning commission beat these things up. The city staff works very hard to make sure that zoning gets us to the strategic plan and the vision that all 7 of us agreed on just last year. Now, I understand it's easy to create a plan and a direction. It's hard to implement it. It's probably the hardest thing to do. The UDO is the implementation of a plan that I, and all of us agreed on just back in August of 2021. So we really do believe, forget that. I believe, because I can't speak for the rest of the council as it relates to this vote, I do believe in my hardest of hearts that what we're doing here will benefit everyone. There's no guarantee, we're not experts. I truly believe that rising tide will raise all those ships, to use that analogy. And we have 5 years of insight, 5 years of conversations, 5 years of losses. We've made mistakes because we're not experts in this. And we've taken all that information, all that data, and all those opinions, and we've culminated into this, which is a plan that we believe wholeheartedly is necessary. Keep in mind, the UDO is not simply a guidance document for downtown and the river. It's the entire city. So voting no tonight for this, you're rejecting the entire ordinance document for our entire city, so we're left with nothing. We have a plan, and we have no implementation tool. This is not just about the downtown core or the RTC. It represents the entire city's development. So I appreciate everyone who's here tonight. We will strive to do our very best to over-communicate and to make communication more available. However that looks, we will do our best. I am sure that that's a task I've given to him, and I'm pretty sure that he knows that that's something he wants from his staff members. So, thank you. Last call for anyone on council. Okay, we can close the floor to council. Would anybody on staff like to address any of the comments that have been made by anybody on the council? Yes, ma'am.
Just to the point that you just made, Mayor, that the UDO is not just about rezoning downtown. It's a large governing, very technical document. It has all of our land use regulations. Our old zoning code needs to go. It's time for it to go. There are things that need to be fixed. There are old conflicts. Our sign code is not appropriate. I will say that now. I don't want to state it as strongly as I could, but it needs to go and it needs to be replaced. So there are legal problems with the old document, but it's time that it, so that's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Mullen. Okay, last call for council. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that as part of the staff, that this has been a team effort. I know I'm the one who pulls up all your emails, but I get input and help from legal counsel, from Christopher, from engineering, from building inspections, from the fire department. I know I'm the vocal minority here, but it's been I appreciate the team that I work with. I have an outstanding team that supports me and supports you all in the city, and so thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Anyone else? Last call for council. Discussion on item 10. Very well, the floor is closed to council on item 10. We will move on to item 11, which is ordinance number 1581, adopting the new Unified Development Ordinance. Is there a motion to approve item 11, ordinance number 1581?
I move to approve.
Second. We have a proper motion and a second to approve item 11, ordinance number 1581, adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance. Let's vote, please.
I'm not voting against economic development of them against taking their freedom from them. No.
So your answer is no?
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item passes 6-1. Item L12 is the emergency clause for ordinance number 1581.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for item 12. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 13 is ordinance number 1582, rezoning certain properties to riverfront tourist commercial, general location being from 91st Street to the Creek Turnpike between the Arkansas River and Levee, plus west to 7th Street between East B Street and Aquarium Place, and including the parcel south of the Creek Turnpike known as the Tulsa Premium Outlets. They are on page 453. Who's, is this you, Mrs. Hilton?
We had the discussion on this already.
Okay, nothing to add? Mr. Stroud, anything to add? Very well. Entertain a motion for 13.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and a second to vote on item 13, ordinance number 1582. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 14, emergency clause for ordinance number 1582.
So moved.
Second.
Vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 15 is ordinance number 1583, rezoning certain properties to downtown core, general location being from A Street to Aquarium Street, from the railroad tracks to 5th Street, page 455 is the motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a proper motion and second for item 15, which is ordinance number 1583. So please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, item 16, emergency clause, ordinance number 1583.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Vote please, item 16.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel? Yes. Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes. Moving on to other business, city manager's report, Mr. Shroud. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor and all members of council, on our street improvement projects, we have had continued communication with the owners of the River District Group, Steve Eaton and Dwayne Phillips on the alignment of 106th Street going east from Elm. We have the concurrence of the River District Group, and we're still working with Steve Eaton and Dwayne Phillips on the proposed alignment. Main Street, Date to the Railroad, or what is really now Elm to the Railroad. We have, I believe, have agreements in place with the final two property owners at Trojan Square and Dr. Harris on acquiring their property for this street improvement project. Aquarium Place surveying began last week on Elm Street. The Elm Street and Aquarium Place intersection, I think a notice to proceed will be sent to Ellsworth Construction on April 18th for 121st Street, the overlay that was approved a couple meetings ago, I think. Miscellaneous items, on Friday, JPD unveiled their new autism awareness vehicle wrap, which I think is pretty neat. Is April Autism Awareness Month. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, you can stop by JPD and look at, I think it's pretty neat. Staff, along with Public Safety, we'll be meeting with our representative on the IMSA Board of Directors to discuss our relationship with them and the service delivery they've been providing. I know that they're having difficulty with staffing, and numerous cities in the Oklahoma City area have voiced some concern. We also have another vendor that's interested in providing service to the city of Jenks, so we'll continue those conversations. We continue to work on the budget and hope to schedule, as I've said before, the budget committee meetings hopefully within the next couple weeks. And we received 5 proposals for the library property, the 4.2 acres on Main Street immediately west of the railroad tracks. We'll be evaluating those and meeting with some stakeholders on that before we come back to council. I don't know that we quite have the criteria set up now to evaluate that, but we'll be updating you on that in the next week or so.
Thank you, Mr. Strout. Any committee reports? Very well. Yes, sir.
Counselor Short and myself have a meeting with the chief, police, and commander, I believe, next Wednesday to discuss some issues with some of the golf carts and mini bikes on the streets to see what we need to look at on the ordinance. I think some council will be there probably, maybe not.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Murray. Anyone else? Okay.
I'm sorry, any other committee member, you're welcome to attend. That's next Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Haven't confirmed it yet, but I'll let you know.
Thank you, sir. The mayor's report this evening. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Mayor Bauer?
Yes, we are adjourned at 9:10 p.m. We will, this next one will be very, very fast. We will call to order the Jenks regularly scheduled meeting of the Jenks Public Works Authority. Roll call, please.
Caitlin? Caitlin?
Here.
Isabel? Here. Murray?
Here.
OJ?
Here.
Klein? Present. Short? Here. Chair Box?
Yes, item number 1 is consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve item 1?
I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for item 1. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Chair Box?
Yes, item 2 we will pull. Anything else in the general manager's report, Mr. Shrout?
No, sir.
Very well. We are adjourned at, my apologies. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move to adjourn.
Sorry, I want to go. Can we get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. Let's vote, please.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Isabel?
Yes.
Murray? Yes. OJ?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Chair Box?
Yes, we adjourned at 9:11.